Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast presented by the Consequence Podcast Network. I'm Michael Rothman, editor-in-chief and president of Consequence of Sound, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Randall Colburn, the rockin' one,
and Mackenzie Gerber.
Now, you can hear us pretty well, right? I think so. That's
Yes.
because we're recording from a studio here in Chicago, Illinois. That wasn't always the case, though. When we started this podcast, we were actually huddled around an old Yeti microphone in Mac's apartment that he doesn't even live in anymore.
That's right.
And there were not 4 or 3 of us, there were like 6 or 7. So we wanted to go back to our older episodes and make sure that you, constant listener, actually have a good grasp on knowing that this is not how it's always going to sound. You know, it's a very rough quality, and we just happen to have that rough quality over Stephen King's most iconic books. So
Yeah, it's rough, but I'd say, for Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Rage, and The Stand, I believe.
Night Shift, too.
And
Night Shift.
Yeah.
We recorded those episodes in a very sort of primitive way, doing our best. That was before we got our studio, which makes us sound so lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'll notice that the audio quality is going to be a little bit not up to par, but I'd say the content of the conversations are still very, very good. I'm very proud of the analysis we did. You'll notice a few other changes too, like in these early episodes, we talk about everything.
Everything.
Yeah, we didn't now we stretch our legs a bit. We do separate episodes for the movies, for other things. And for here, we're basically like, let's talk about all the Stephen King news, as well as the book, as well as the films, as well as the plays, as well as everything. So these episodes run long. Well, I mean, a lot of ours do, but these run extra long because we're talking about those things. And you'll also notice that kind of the way that we break down our conversations now is a little bit different. We refine that over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll notice that it's a little bit rougher, but it's the same quality Losers Club content
And
that you've always wanted.
these episodes nearly killed us. The Night Shift episode, I got the flu because we recorded everything.
We
in one
recorded
day.
for 11 hours straight,
Yeah.
I think.
Two
Yeah.
episodes back to back covering all 20 stories?
All 20 stories
And the movies.
And the movies. It was exhausting. I think towards the end of the episode, I started fading away.
Dan started crying.
Dan started crying. I cried in the Shining episode, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, these episodes are special.
They're very good episodes.
They're very special episodes, but we did want to make sure that you didn't go into this podcast thinking that it's going to sound like this forever. Because obviously, as you could hear from us right now, that's just not the case.
Yeah, if you're just popping in to hear like, oh, I love Salem's Lot, I'm going to check out this new podcast. Why does it sound like they're recording underwater? You know, we just never really thought that. I think that, you know, we were testing things out. We were seeing if anybody would even care if we did this podcast. And luckily, a lot of you guys did care, and you listened and supported us and followed us on social media. And so we were able to, you know, beef up the sound, make things sound better, expand our lineup, and refine the way that we do things as it is now. So.
Because so much has changed since 2017, not only with us, but the whole world at large. And you're
right.
going to hear about all of it as you're journeying through each one of these episodes.
And now we'll let you venture into King's Dominion in your biohazard suit with Stephen King's The Stand.
Greetings, constant listeners. We'd like to thank you for your listens, your likes, your messages, and your deep, probing criticisms and condemnations of any Full House themed related tomfoolery from previous episodes. It is all appreciated, and we'd appreciate it even more if you'd leave us a review on iTunes. That really helps other constant listeners find the podcast and join in on this. I like to call it an interactive book club.
Ooh, that's your good elevator pitch.
I think so. I think that's a good way to put it. My name is Randall Colburn, by the way, and I am a senior writer at Consequence of Sound. And I've missed you all because I've been gone. I've been in Las Vegas.
On a journey of your own.
Journey of my own. And joining me today is...
I'm Dan Caffrey, senior writer. Also, I think you and I have been gone for the same amount of time.
Yeah, we've been gone for several.
I'm Tom Cullen and you're Stu. Off and we're back in the free zone.
We were
now.
watching Rambo in a Motel 6 or whatever in the middle of a snowstorm.
And I'm Mackenzie Gerber, and I guess you can liken me to the dead kid in the car.
The Wolfman.
Yeah.
I'm Allison Shoemaker, and I'm the rotating female panelists.
Who's also dead in a car somewhere.
Yeah, probably.
And also the only constant stand presence, right? Because you read it for the first time. Because all of us have sat out for at least one episode.
It's my gimmick.
Exactly.
We're excited to hear your cumulative thoughts, which we will arrive at, I'm sure. Today, if you haven't pieced it together, today we are here to put a bow on our discussion of Stephen King's behemoth, The Stand.
Ah, yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
When we last left you, our intrepid heroes, Stu, Larry, Glenn, and good old country boy Ralph Brentner.
And Kojak.
I forgot about Kojak. We're set out on foot to Las Vegas. Nick Andros was blown into pieces. Harold and Nadine were fugitives. And Mother Abigail was also dead. So Dan, why don't you catch us up, just for listeners who maybe haven't read The Stand in a while? How does book 3 begin?
Sure. So book 3 is pretty much focused on the road to Las Vegas, then the people in Las Vegas once they've reached it, both the spies and the 4 members that Mother Abigail has sent off to take their final stand. And then, of course, the return to the Colorado Free Zone. But I'd say it's mostly a Vegas-centric chapter. I mean, this is titled The Stand, right? This book 3 is actually titled The Stand.
I think so.
Let me double check that.
That is correct.
Yes.
Book 3 is actually titled The Stand.
I liked how casually you were just like, they went to Vegas to take the stand.
they took their stands. The stand happened. They stood. They sat back down and they returned home. This book is titled The Stand, and I mean, and boy, does it live up to that, because that's really what it's focused on. Compared to the other books, it's really lean and short. I mean, it really is focused on the journey to what becomes the climax of the book. Character-wise, we open with Judge Ferris, one of the spies being sent to Las Vegas on his way there, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. He meets some trouble, to say the least.
And then we kind of get an update on all the spies, kind of at the beginning of the third book.
Because we haven't heard from them yet.
Right. We meet Dana, who is stupping Lloyd Henry, I think is the right phrase.
And then you see Tom Cullen, who's, I think he was the first one sent, right, to Las Vegas. So he's kind of been blending in with their society, and it's almost time for him to go back. And we also get to see Harold and Nadine on the way to Vegas. And boy, does not end well for anyone involved.
No, sir.
Yeah, and then, of course, like we said, the four heroes at the center and their furry canine companion, Kojak. And that's pretty much where we're at. It's what I love about this book 3 is that in the vein of the second half of book 1, first half of book 2, it's very much like a road movie again.
Yeah. I think what you said, Dan, about, I know it's kind of silly because it's such a vague thing, but The Stand, I think that's probably like when we're talking about the hook of book 3, it really is sort of about all these characters sort of, taking their final bow or taking their final meeting, like their maker in a lot of ways. I mean, we see sort of, everyone's fate is very much interwoven into this final book. And I feel like that concept of taking a stand for whatever it is you actually believe in is something that is a running theme throughout this, not just with our heroes, but with people like Lloyd and Trash Can Man too. So,
yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it is funny, the fates of pretty much every character in the book, not even just the people in the free zone, but Vegas also. It rests all on these 4 guys going off to make their stand. And something that's interesting is that we're set up for it to be this climactic battle of good and evil. But if you think about what happens, there's actually not a ton of action on their part. It's pretty much going there, like you said, standing up for what they believe in. And we'll get into a little bit of Trash Can Man. It sort of indirectly setting these other things into motion that result in the big explosion.
It's true.
Yeah. And so that's something that's interesting to me. And so when I first rereading this section, seeing all them just get thrown in jail, they don't bring any weapons. You're kind of like, man, why aren't you guys attacking? Why aren't you doing something else? And there was a certain point in the book where they were on the not the cross. What are those disembowelment cages? Whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
where Larry and Ralph they're the only two left, and they're being put in these cages to be disemboweled. And I kept thinking, I'm like, well, them showing up to Vegas, does it actually make a difference? Like, Trash Can Man already had this nuclear warhead. Like, they were going to get blown up either way. But then I did think, one of you guys brought up, you were like, well, no, but they do create a diversion for Trash Can Man to get back in, not knowingly, but he's able to make his way back in undetected because of that. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, just jump right to it. No, I think it's absolutely. I think you're right. I think if they weren't there, the crowd wouldn't all be gathered in that one central location of Vegas. They wouldn't, be doing all that setup for the big event. People would have been, and at that point, there's a lot of deserters and whatnot. There's not a lot of people checking and making sure that the people coming in are the people that are supposed to be coming in, etc. So yeah, I think absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to question the idea of whether or not. I mean, I think if we're talking about sort of themes and stuff, one of the things that fascinates me about Book 3 is how involved is a Christian God in all of this, or a devil? Is there such, in this world, is Mother Abigail's God truly the overseer of all of these plans and actions? When at the end of the book, when something that looks like the hand of God comes down,
oh, the hand of God!
Like, is that excuse me? Is that are we supposed to be taking that seriously? Like, what is actually going on? Is the Trash Can Man, in a weird way, an emissary of God? And I think that that's a really interesting question here, because I know that that's something that you and I have discussed, Dan, the idea of how prevalent the religious aspects are in this. And I guess when I was younger, I always, I was raised Catholic. I was a very simple kid when it came to religion. And so I just always thought that, yeah, Mother Abigail's God is the God I read about in the picture books. And Randall Flagg is a sidekick to the horned, pitchfork holding devil. But, I think rereading it now as an adult, I was actually very struck by, I think that King does allow there to be a certain amount of ambiguity to it. I feel like he isn't, I think that there is obviously something otherworldly going on here, but I'm not necessarily sure that I would attribute it to, a God versus devil sort of scenario, because I think that there's just too many moving parts, and not all the characters, it's not like every character has a moment where they find God. It's like there's a lot, Stu never really has that moment, does he?
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, and you guys touched on this a lot in the last episode too, this idea of how religion does come into play within The Stand. And that was something I struggle a lot with in Book 2. It's not the idea of faith necessarily, but with Book 2, it's the idea of faith, but then on top of that, you have, I think Justin kept calling it the back padding and all this. It allows for everyone to get very self-righteous about it, which of course becomes a downfall, because Mother Abigail says the sin is pride. And
the sin is pride in Vegas, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the religious stuff didn't bother, because I'm not religious, but it didn't bother me in Book 2, because in the end, like you said, it did become a little bit more about putting your faith into something bigger than yourself, which I think is maybe something we can all relate to. Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
No, I think that's true. And I think, when you see, even Larry, who I feel like grapples with it and grapples with going on the journey.
Yeah.
And then, but at the end, when he's, strung up, I feel like he has definitely kind of made his peace and does believe in something higher. I mean, just from anything that he says in those last few pages.
And also, with Larry, I mean, that he was almost, it's almost like he needed to believe in something in those 5. He doesn't really accept that there's a higher power until he's really on death's door. And then, and I think that he finds, Ralph, who's always had that faith, Larry finds some kind of solace in those final moments in that, but it's literally, not until they're in jail cells. You know, and they hear Ralph or Glenn gets shot.
I'm also a little jealous of Ralph and Larry because right there at the end they get to see the hand of God. So it's like well, now they definitely know. They definitely believe now if they didn't before, and they're gonna
Well, I don't think the hand is as hand-like as it is in the film.
Rubbish. I don't buy it at all.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that is a good point, though. I mean, we always, I think anyone who's read The Stand, even people who love it, the hand of God always becomes like a talking point, I feel like. And the way it's phrased in this is, it did indeed look like a hand. I think Ralph says the hand of God, and Larry says it looked like a hand. Mm-hmm. And here's the problem with that, as I see it, is that whether or not it's actually the hand of God, it still is formed out of this ball of electricity that comes from magical means from Randall Flagg.
Yeah.
And that is something I struggle with a little bit. I'm like, okay, well, whether or not it's a hand, it still comes from a fantastical thing.
Yeah.
So it takes away from the ambiguity. What do you think, Allison?
I don't know. For me, that it feels like a much more classic story, and that sort of removed from religion. Like, if anything, I think the end of the book suggests that the rules and ties that we set up around organized religion, or really any sort of organized system in which we begin to tell people who's bad and who's good, are dangerous.
Yeah.
But I was that specifically, I think, actually is clearest at the end of book 2 when the free zone, the people of the free zone are so like hungry for punishment and for bloodlust.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, at the meeting.
Out of righteousness. Anyway, to me, it's the thing that I really like about it, as slightly silly as it is, and I haven't seen the miniseries, so I'm really looking forward to this moment.
God, yeah.
Is that it emerges from darkness and is transformed into a power for good, right? Like, it means more to me that it's one of Flagg's little magic electric balls that then becomes this force for quote unquote good. And that I find really fitting. They're not remotely the same story, but for whatever reason, reading book 3, I thought about Harry Potter a lot.
Yeah.
Specifically in the way that the people in Las Vegas, the way their feelings about Flagg start to transform, and thinking about this great line from one of the Potter books, maybe the 6th, about how tyrants always fear those they oppress because they know someday someone will rise up amongst them. And as Flagg becomes more and more unhinged, and as people start to question his infallibility, like, that feels to me like a grander good and evil as opposed to God and devil, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also interesting because I feel like, and obviously the Potter books hadn't come out yet, but King's a big Potterhead. I mean, he's a big fan of J.K. Rowling.
Wolves of the Kala.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's Wolves of the Kala. Yeah, there's some direct Potter stuff in there, which is very interesting. But no, the whole ball of electricity thing. And when we get to talking about Flagg later on, I got some stuff on this guy. I've got his number, his ticket.
I'm really struck by what you said, Allison. Just the idea of a grander good and evil, and I think also what I love about book 3 that we really get to see is we get such good insight into the people of Vegas, who, though it's implied that a lot of their, I'll say, subservience or nobility comes out of fear because Flagg is crucifying people. There's a lot of sections of the various spies who are sharing sort of their experience with the other people there, and it's very positive for the most part. Like, I have this quote here. Let me see this. Like, the others were also okay. She thought that Vegas had a rather larger proportion of stupids than the zone, but none of them wore fangs, and they didn't turn into bats at moonrise. They were also people who worked much harder than she remembered the people in the zone working. In the free zone, you saw people idling in the parks at all hours of the day, and there were people who decided to break for lunch from noon until 2. That sort of thing didn't happen over here. From 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., everybody was working. And then also I was very struck by when they were talking about the children that live in Vegas.
Oh, yeah. Little Denny or something?
Yeah, Denny. Let's see. There were about 20 kids in Vegas, ages ranging from 4. That was Daniel McCarthy, the pet of everyone in town, known as Denny, up to 15. They had found 2 people with teaching certificates, and classes went on 5 days a week. Lloyd, who had quit school after repeating his junior year for the 3rd time, was very proud of the educational opportunities that were being provided. The pharmacies were open and unguarded. People came and went all the time, but they took nothing heavier than a bottle of aspirin or Gelusil. There was no drug problem in the West. Anyone who had seen what happened to Hector Drogon knew what the penalty for a habit was. There were also no rich Moffats either. Everyone was friendly and straight, and it was wise to drink nothing stronger than bottled beer. So the fear underlies it, but at the same time, the way that the scenes with Dini are always really revealing, because you sort of see the way that these other people within Vegas, like that, you know, they're really good with kids. They're really friendly. I love that they like have educational opportunities going on. These are all things that they don't have in the Free Zone, and I've always found that really interesting, because, you know, it's almost like in the film. I'll just make this connection. There's moments in the film where all you see in Vegas are like biker looking dudes in like leather vests, like burning cars and shit.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's like it all just seems a little. It's not all like that in the movie, but you know, and I think that if you look at it sort of, you know, like the ideas of good and evil are too nuanced in this than to just be like God and devil.
Right.
You know, it's more grander philosophical ideas of what is good and what is not.
I do want to touch on one thing that Allison mentioned, and it ties back to the religious element of it not necessarily just being a critique of absolute systems within a faith, but also a critique of systems in general, which I think is also a big hook/theme, especially at the end. I mean, the last line of the book proper is, do you think, I'm paraphrasing, but do you think humans will ever learn anything? And they say, I don't know. And I think that becomes clear when, after the stand has happened, it's not just, oh, the bad guys are dead, we're fine now. They go back to the Free Zone, and more people are there. They want more structure in place. Part of why Stu and Franny leave at the end is because there's this like new sheriff in town, quote unquote,
Yeah.
and you see they're going back to the old ways. I mean, they're going back to having these institutions, and that's of course what leads to things like Superflu in the first place. And that to me was such a resonant final theme for the book, like a final statement, and something I didn't pick up on when I was little, because like you guys said, when you're little, you're drawn more to the good and evil aspects of it, which is certainly part of it. But I think that is such a complex thing for a work of post-apocalyptic fiction to say, because it lets people rebuild, and we get to see the good guys, and then Stephen King directly critiques all of them. And I don't know, did that like resonate with you guys? So that was something that was very haunting to me, especially with what's going on in the world today, just the idea of systems failing. And I think that maybe is also a big theme/hook of the book.
Yeah, I think it's actually really interesting because, like you know, I grew up with the miniseries, so reading the book for the first time, book 3, the whole idea of Las Vegas having people that aren't just like these crazy bikers, you know, that are just like regular people, was very interesting because, you know, it's not black and white. There's probably a lot of people that were there that were probably good people, but just scared, and like you said, out of fear, went along with this. You know, very like, you know, Mike's gonna love this. It's very World War II. You know, Germany. You know, like there's a lot of good people there that just they went along with it because they were scared for their families and scared that there was gonna be this punishment if they didn't. And it also makes you wonder: did everybody have dreams?
Yeah,
like everybody. Like, did everybody have a dream about Flag? Did everybody, or was it just? Did they hear things
in book 3? And I don't remember where it is, but about how everyone in Vegas had dreams of Flag, where it was something they all shared.
See, and that's scary because if you're having these constant dreams of Flag, and I mean, I can see people being frightened into going there. Yeah. But it's also interesting because, like you said, you know, at the end of the book, where there's this sheriff and things are kind of going back to the ways, or like Allison mentioned, when everyone's kind of like hungry for this, you know, punishment for the people that, you know, for Harold and Nadine. It's like, well, yeah, all these people in Boulder, maybe they had dreams of Mother Abigail. Maybe they went there because they were like, well, this seems a lot better than what the other guy has to offer. But are they just like pure people and like, you know what I mean?
I think that's pretty apparent that they're not.
Yeah. And that's what I think is so interesting about the book is that, you know, it's not black and white, and things are probably just going to kind of end up being the same. And, you know, so I'm glad Franny and Stu decided to cut out.
I find the end very melancholy in a lot of ways. It makes me sad only because like when Stu and Franny, you know, she has her baby, and you know, they seem to be settling in, and like they're like, we can finally really exist as a couple and as a family. They're, You know, I think I'm very touched by the idea of community and how lonely it must be in kind of, you know, a post-apocalyptic world, and the idea that, you know, but they know that they have to leave because what Stu and what Franny have learned is that what you were just saying, Dan, about how systems fail, and once you start forming communities, those communities begin finding enemies or begin finding who is infringing upon our right to exist, and then once you start appointing police chiefs, and, you know, once you start doing all that, it's like all of the systems begin to become somewhat oppressive. And so it's, you know, but then the thing is, so it makes sense that they would want to leave and go be on their own, but I just found such a melancholy, because it's like, you know, I'm a big fan of any story where the band gets together, you know, and you have all these people together, and like I love the idea of, you know, Stu and Franny hanging out with Lucy and you know, Brad Kitchener and whoever else is hanging around.
Getting the power on, man.
I know, but it's just kind of like, so there's also something a little melancholy to me about the end of the book of them going off on their own. And I know that they're happy, but just the image of them kind of being alone with their child and kind of going up to Maine, there's just something kind of solitary about that even though I understand the grander themes of the book about, you know, not rushing to start systems and communities and organizations, you know, there's still this sense of like desolate kind of loneliness.
It's funny you bring up the timeline, because this is something that actually bugged me about this time around with the book that I don't think we brought up yet, is that this book happened so quick if you think about it. I mean, the world ends in a couple weeks or something like that, and even from the moment that they start the free zone to when they take the final stand, it's only like a couple months maybe. And sometimes I wonder, and maybe that's very much on purpose. Maybe King is trying to say, no, humanity would be in a rush to get all this stuff back that they don't have. And I don't know, part of me does wish that maybe they were in the free zone for like a year or so before all this happened. Like the rebuilding and all that seems very quick. But then again, I don't know, maybe it is in very much working in tandem with this final statement of the book. And I will say also, this book ends up saving book 2 for me, because book 2 is so aggravating with all the stuff we're talking about, like the rebuilding society and the meetings and the minutes and all that. And none of the ideas of systems failing, except maybe from Glenn, none of that is really confirmed, I think, until the very end of this book. And that kind of makes the more arduous stuff worth it for me.
Well, I think there's a little of that in book 2, but it's right at the end, right? Mm-hmm. For me, it's that final meeting they have before the forest set out. Yeah. Where I can't remember his name, but the douchebag who takes the long lunch breaks.
Oh,
and
yeah.
is like sweaty and awful.
Not Rich Moffat's the drunk who dies, but
the other one.
The blowhard guy.
Yeah. I know he's the one that somehow gets nominated to fill Nick's seat on the council. And everyone is immediately horrified, and it just made me think, like, well, yep, that's the downside of democracy, right? Welcome to our world, The Stand. But I also think that there's a difference between, and the book does a pretty good job of this, between community and society, because I think the book also argues that people aren't meant to be lonely, and that they gravitate towards each other, and we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to communicate and to enrich each other and to keep each other safe and to nourish each other. But on the other hand, when there are too many people in one spot, they just, God, what line is that? It's from Gilmore Girls. You can't get too many wasps in one room together. They start to form more clubs, right? And it just, the more people are around, the more cooks that are in the kitchen, which is not to say that our characters have the right idea, right? It's not, I don't think that Stu Redman is inherently better. I mean, yes, he is. But I don't think it's right that we should just find the people who are somehow the purest among us and let them make all the decisions, because that way lies madness. But I do think that the book does a really good job of saying, like, well, this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Because this is a nice thing. And they turn the power on and everyone is excited and they all come together and there are these wonderful things happening, even with this ominous cloud on the horizon and even with the fucked up shit that's going on. But then they just start to form more clubs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't actually think that there is a happy medium. I think you cannot have one without the other. Yeah. And that is what depresses me. Yeah. Like, utopia is impossible. Maybe that's the argument of The Stand. There is no such thing as utopia.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you, because like, and King does this a lot where, you know, even in the books where he focuses on small towns, that you would think would be more pure and more like a better life in a small town than a city. No, it's got a huge underbelly of like darkness and seediness, and I just think it's also really sad. I was very melancholy at the end of the book too, and I was happy that they get out and they're able to go live in Maine or wherever they choose to go. But at the same time, the whole book's been about like finding if there's anyone else left out there, and then just to go off and be alone.
Yeah.
At the end of it, it's just kind of like, wow, like.
Yeah, when Stu says, when they're sitting on the porch of Hemingford home at the end, Fran asks, "Oh, are you lonely?" And Stu says, "No, but I might be." And they always mention this idea of going back to Boulder. I love what you said about the small town seediness and that underbelly already being there. I wasn't on the Salem's Lot episode, but I decided I wanted to read all the books for the episodes I wasn't on just to catch up, and it's really fun rereading them. And so I reread Salem's Lot the past couple weeks, and I had forgotten about I don't even know if you guys talked about him on the episode. Parkins Gillespie is the sheriff.
The sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we talked about him.
He's not in the book a lot. He's not a main character, but it's this thing where he's actually like the first one to really realize they're vampires, and he's the sheriff, and he just kind of decides, you know what? Small towns are fucked. Like, the people are awful. I'm not even going to worry about this. He bails, and it's funny because they frame
lives too.
No, he does. He's like one, and they frame him like he's supposed to be this coward almost, because Ben Mears even calls him out. He's like, because he's like, "Oh, Sheriff, we need your help." And Sheriff's like, "Oh yeah, for the vampires." And they're like, "Oh, you know about that?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's why I'm leaving. You should leave too." And Ben is like, "You're a spineless, creep. You should help us out." And then Parkins Gillespie is kind of like, I mean, I'm once again paraphrasing, but he's kind of like, "No, fuck you. This town was awful before all this happened. There are all these secrets being kept. Our priorities are all screwed up. Maybe this is just the thing that happens, and it's best to go live your life." And he does. He gets in his police cruiser and he goes to live with his sister in Kittery, and he's one of the only people who lives. And it got me thinking about The Stand a little bit. I mean, Salem's Lot is on a much smaller scale. It's much more of a microcosm than The Stand, but both books are about societies being torn down by a dark force. And The Stand is more about rebuilding. Salem's Lot never gets to that point. But I think what you're saying, I think in a way, Parkins Gillespie's, I don't know how you say it, viewpoint is almost a more nihilistic take on what Fran and Stu realize at the end. This idea that, okay, well, yeah, this disease wiped out 99% of the population, but maybe we were kind of fucked before that, and that's a really, really scary thought. Like that idea you said of there not being a happy medium between chaos and utopia.
And just like the idea that, the only way we know how to rebuild is to rebuild what we already know. Mm-hmm. And then I think what there's one of the things they're trying to get at in this book is like, but what if there is another way, but it's so hard to find what that way is when you do not know what that is. We immediately go back to what's comfortable or the things that made us comfortable in a previous life or whatever. Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I think that book 3 also does a great job of underlining maybe the best of humanity, the people who are willing to take a stand, right? Like, I think the moments that I find most affecting, and one that I wasn't expecting at all, and somehow it never came up, so it was completely unspoiled for me through our conversations, is when Whitney speaks up.
Yeah.
That just knocked my socks right off. That's a little hero moment, like a pure, undiluted hero moment from someone who's kind of a shit, and somehow that makes it sweeter.
Yeah.
I found that very affecting.
And it's funny because it ties back to this thing of we were talking about before, serving this greater good. And Mother Abigail even says at a certain point earlier on, like, oh, a flag is probably part of God's plan, even if he doesn't even know it. And Whitney, by doing that, I mean, that's what leads to the electricity, and that's what, of course, leads to the nuke going off. So
that's a good point.
So just by standing up to standing up to flag and what's it? But he says something like, "This isn't how people act. What's wrong with you guys?" Like this, and he's helped. He helped crucify his friend Dorgan. We gotta talk about those names. He's helped crucify his friend, so Whitney's actually participated in a lot of these acts, and then the time he decides to stand up and say, no, this isn't right, that's what actually ends up leading to the greater good, and that's really interesting. Really quick, we should probably save this for the adaptations, but I had to say it. So did any of you finish the Stand comics?
I've not finished them yet, but I've been reading.
I finished it.
All right, spoiler, Randall, this isn't that big of a deal, but I hated this because Whitney's moment is so hard hitting. So in the comics, which are very true to the book, they don't have Whitney do that in the end. Whitney is a character, but it's not him who does that. It's someone named Richard Bachman, and he's drawn to look exactly like Stephen King. He comes out and does it. And I guess maybe they're saying, oh, well, the architect of all this, yeah, he's the one who ends up being the agent of change. But it is so... Because I love that moment for Whitney. I mean, it's the redemption arc of his character.
That's gross.
And they say...
That's like, fuck it, because he's also already Glenn, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's Glenn.
Exactly.
Do we need two Stephen Kings in the... It's like, just before we started recording, listeners, we were talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and I don't know if it's all four of us who share this opinion, but certainly three of us were. Mac, I want to know your thoughts, or whoever wasn't talking about it. But man, we fucking hate those Stan Lee cameos. Right?
Oh, yeah.
It just... What? It's just like a stinky armpit in a wonderful movie. I hate them so much. I know that comics fans revere him, and I understand why.
And he's great.
But he's really bad on camera. The worst one... Oh my... I don't care. This is a tangent that I'm allowed to have. The worst one is in Agent Carter, where there's this very hard-hitting scene where Haley Atwell, who's a wonderful actress, is talking about this moment of intense betrayal from Stark the Elder, and it's because it involves Captain America's blood, and it's awful. It's this awful, awful, very upsetting scene on a street corner while Stark is getting his shoes shined, basically. And then a paper folds down, and it's Stan Lee, and he says something like, "Can I have the sports section?" Like something just, it's awful. So
Pulls you out of it.
terrible. It just, there's no reason for that
Then
shit.
he pauses and gives a wink to the camera.
Ding!
Yeah.
It's fine. In the Netflix shows, he's always just like a poster of a cup. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
It's like, only you can report forest fires, and only it's Stanley, and I am fine with that. It's just the bullshit whenever it's like, we're going to stop the action now for an in-joke that 10% of you care about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our listeners would probably agree. I agree with you. I don't like the Stan Lee cameos only because they've become much more noticeable and like flagrant now. Like it's blatant and it takes you out of the movie.
Totally.
Exactly.
Whereas I feel like, you know, Mr. Stephen King has a I wouldn't even say a cameo, but he's in The Stand, the miniseries.
Plays
so you'll see he plays a character. But in that, I don't mind it as much because unless it's not cute. Yeah, he plays a role, and it's not like super. It's not like all of a sudden we keep focusing on King. You know, he plays his role, and it's there, and it's there. Whatever.
Margaret Atwood has a cameo in The Handmaid's Tale. It's blink and you'll miss it. But
feel like
Margaret
it's like-
Atwood's in The Handmaid's Tale, and that totally works for me.
Like in Pet Cemetery and Sleepwalkers and stuff too, he pops up, but it's never like cute and winky.
It's never and the problem is the way he pops up in this adaptation. Once again, in addition to taking away a moment from a character, because Whitney's not like a huge character, but
It's a huge moment.
it's a huge moment, and that it gets taken away, and also too, it goes back to you're putting it. I hate it when they put it in the scenes that are supposed to have the most emotional weight. It's the same thing as Stanley in Civil War. Like the end is supposed to be this like emotional thing, like, oh man, War Machine's heard this, and then is Tony Dump there? What does he say? Tony Droney Stark. He like says some.
Yeah.
Tony's. I don't know. He shows up as the mailman. Like mispronounces Tony Stark. His name, yeah.
No, yeah, and I would liken this to like if M. Night did the Stand movie, he would absolutely be the one to come in and be like, "Hey, what you're doing is wrong." And
I don't
because
know.
he always writes himself into like pivotal roles like that,
savior.
though. Like in Signs, and he's like, you know, I don't know if they like water. You know, he was like, oh, you're going to give us the MacGuffin? Like, are you kidding me? You know, no, but
his
like.
role in The Sixth Sense is fine.
No, The Sixth Sense is great, but that was also before anyone knew who he was. You know, like I didn't know that was M. Night when I first watched it.
Unbreakable
you know?
and Sixth Sense is fine. The worst is in Lady in the Water, where he plays the writer, and they're like, "What's this?" He's like, "Oh, it's called The Cookbook. It's just my ideas on politics, the world." You know, it ends up like saving the day. Like,
And again, let me just start this out with. I really love M. Night's a lot of his movies in the beginning. I just saying that out loud.
Yeah,
because he's fallen off the boat for me. But I don't like the reason I don't like it in the comic, Dan, like you're saying, is because Whitney's one of those characters. Again, one of those characters we've seen a little bit of in Vegas, and we know like, okay, not everybody there is just this awful human being, and he actually comes around and tries to do what's right. And to take that away from him and just to give it to like this blatant, King ripoff Bachman thing, it's like a stunt, and it takes away from it.
I actually think it's interesting that because Whitney's stand in a weird way dovetails with Lloyd's stand, because Whitney approaches Lloyd basically saying, we're leaving, we're not in support of Flag, he's falling apart, we have to leave, it's falling apart too. And Lloyd feels that way too. He understands. He sees the cracks. He's starting to doubt Flag. But what I love is even Lloyd has his own stand where he says, no, I'm standing with Flag because he believed in me and he helped me and he gave me a life that I never thought I could have. He gave me power and he saved my life when I was,
at his lowest. At
his lowest, like in a jail cell, and he chose me. Like, he made me feel special. And so, in a weird way, like, Lloyd has that moment, too, where he refuses to abandon Flag, even though he sees the ship sinking.
But then he also, in his final moments, says, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Before they're all blown to hell.
Does he? Oh, so he's
yeah,
actually
I'm going to try to find the exact quote. But
I think he says...
I thought he says we're fucked.
he does, but then he thinks, oh, thank God.
I don't remember that.
Man.
I shall not fear, da-da-da-da-da. I'm going to find it right now.
Man, that's
really,
crazy.
I was like, in spite of it all, it's oh shit, we're all fucked, Lloyd Henry cried. He put his hands over his head and fell to his knees. Oh God, thank God, Larry thought. I will fear no evil. I will silent white light filled the world.
Oh, so but
Right?
Larry thinks that then, not Lloyd.
Oh shit, that else confused me. I was so happy for Lloyd.
No, I'm going to say, though, like, in a weird way, I like that you brought that up. Because
God damn it.
But
It's
the
okay,
thing
Allison.
is, no. It's like I wouldn't be surprised if that was true in Lloyd's head. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I actually like that you say that because I feel like that, and I feel like maybe the reason you thought that is because in a lot of ways it does align with where Lloyd's character is at.
That felt very authentic to
Yeah,
me, and
like-
and I obviously, first of all, huge pet peeve. Please, if characters are going to share major scenes together, start their names with different fucking
I know,
letters.
right?
I read so fast. I don't have time for this shit. Just
we have-
name him something else.
Yeah, and we have a big pound cake later, and when it comes to names, which you hinted at earlier, but we're
Oh,
gonna
man,
get there. I'm
it's-
so excited to talk about that.
boy.
It's
but,
ridiculous.
But I'll say that no, but it's like let's talk about another stand too, and that would be Harold Lauders. Like, what stand does he have in those?
Are we
in his
moving
final
into
moments?
zeros and villains?
No,
I think this
Okay.
is on themes.
I think this is on.
Okay,
theme still,
cool.
Yeah, and
I-
so
With Harold. It's funny because I know last time you guys talked about his nickname Hawk and how and I think a couple of you were laughing at it. I think Mike or someone. I think it's Mike was like,
Yeah,
oh,
but
I like
it's a pretty
that.
cool name.
No, and it does. First off, side
It's like
note.
Taserface.
Oh man, C minus, but no, don't get it. It was funny because the first day we started recording the first episode, the stand was at my house, and I had to go get some medication for my dog, whose name is Hank. Right before we recorded, and they accidentally printed his name as Hawk, like on the prescription. So I was like, ooh. Anyway, with Harold, I mean, you guys talked in length about Harold, and I agree with all of it. Like, I think he's arguably the most complex character, and I think the stand that he finally takes is, in a weird way, he finally decides to embrace his best self, right?
Yeah.
Like his goodness. I mean, his whole conflict in book 2, and it's the saving grace of book 2, is that he realizes, wow, I could start over here, and I could be this good person here, and people respect me, and all I have to do is let go of my insecurities and that shitty old self where I was jealous and petty and everything else, and he can't do it. And he doesn't do it, even when they blow up the house and they kill Nick and all that. The only time he really comes to that realization is when he's writing in his journal at the end, or his ledger at the end, when he's dying and he signs at Hawk. And I know it's such a brief moment, but for me, the stand he's taking is finally embracing his true self, and I don't know, that resonates to me.
See,
Matt Kesson
I didn't think that.
No,
Because I felt like if he was, that would be this inner monologue that happens with him, and then, he blows his head off. But because he went out of his way to, like, write it and, like, sign his name Hawk and stuff, to me, that just felt like he was still trying to, prove that, or needed the validation that, hopefully someone will find this and know that I turned good at the end, and it was just like,
that's interesting.
I'll say this, like, kind of in the middle of what you guys are saying. I think that Harold never really was able to get over the things that really undid him, which is his own sense of the fact that he doesn't feel appreciated, that he is a genius who, you know, never really got his due, and so on and so forth. Because, you know, when he realizes that Nadine isn't going to help him, he tries to kill her. He points his gun at her, and Flag is very clear on the fact that, you know, if he hadn't blocked the bullet, then he would have killed Nadine. But it's like, that's Harold's first instinct, is to kill the woman who betrays him, or kill the person who betrays him. And it's only as he's lying there dying, I think he maybe doesn't have a moment of self-actualization where he, sort of, accepts and embraces kind of a new, truer, more, the good parts of himself. I think he just wants, I think it's a moment that it's a person that he knows he can't be, but when he writes it down and says, I was misled, and signs it Hawk, it's like, maybe I can be remembered this way in this one moment. It's like, I am not this person, but, if I kill myself in this moment after I've written this note, maybe I can freeze myself as this person.
I pulled up the section, and there are a couple things that to me seem to indicate it's maybe like a first step.
Yeah.
And this is going back to the old toxic masculinity, right? Because I think that's part of it.
Oh, yeah.
But King writes, dying, he felt as if he had gained a little sanity and maybe even a little dignity. He did not want to demean that with small excuses that would come limping off the page on crutches. And I think that the idea that you can go, no, I was a shit, I was wrong, not this is what the world made me. And I was misled is a little bit that, right? But it's also true.
Yeah.
He's 16. I mean, he's 16.
Yeah,
You know?
It's also true. But there's something that I think is the beginning of a good person when he says, I did these wrong things and I will not deny that I did them of my own free will.
Yeah.
And that is pretty powerful to me. And I don't think it means that he's somehow transformed into a righteous person, but I do think it's the indication that had circumstances been different, if he had come to this realization without a leg that, quote, had swelled up like an inner tube, it smelled like gassy, overripe bananas.
Oh, boy.
I know, it's so gross. Anyway, that maybe there would have been some sort of redemption in the vein of Larry's redemption.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think that the saddest thing, like Dan just mentioned, this is a kid.
Right. It's easy to forget that.
And yeah, it's so easy to forget that when you're reading this. And like, God, 16-year-old me, yeah, I still don't have things figured out. You know what I mean? Like, and also, when you're on your deathbed, it's easy to see things as black and white and like what really matters. So,
well,
maybe had, and I wish that he had come to that, when he was alive, when he was making, real decisions. But I guess at the end, maybe there was a little hope for him. But
he's taken a stand, against himself in a way.
Also, and I do like, it's funny hearing all of our different perspectives on Harold. Although we are on a little bit opposite ends of the spectrum, I do like what Max said too about he's still going out in his final moments as a writer, and we're all writers here. I don't care who you are, how to give a person you are. When you're writing something, especially about yourself on the page, you're still cultivating a certain image for a narrative for yourself, right? Like even if you post like a really endearing Facebook post about your grandmother dying, you're still in like Facebook mode, which is different than a little bit different than your normal self. So even, and I think it is possible to have both. Like he has the change, but he is still present. It's like the end of the Pillow Man, where it's like, okay, well, this is how I want to be remembered.
I don't know if Justin mentioned this in a prior podcast, but
hi, Justin.
Hi, Justin. Do they when they find Harold? Do they see the note? Or has it blown away? Or was that just something people were like, well, it would have been really cool if when they found him, that note wasn't even there.
That's a good point. Did they mention it? I don't know if they did.
I don't remember them mentioning
it. Maybe could have been one of those things, too, where King, either the note or them finding him was added later on, and maybe he just didn't sync up the two. I would hope that they did find it.
But see, yeah, that's the thing. I kind of like that if they found him, maybe the note had blown away, and, it was like, well, you gave it your best shot, but even they didn't even see it, what I mean? So it was like, I don't know. That's interesting to me because then no one will know, but he knew that he made that decision. So I don't know. It's one of those strange things, but yeah, Harold's a complicated guy.
Yeah.
So I just looked it up, and Harold, when they find Harold, he's still clutching the notebook in his hand, but there's a specific mention of them taking the gun out of his mouth and no reference to the notebook at all.
So they may not even take the notebook.
I think that they might not even open it. I think if they opened it, we would know. And so they don't. And I think that's about as fitting an ending for Hawk as you could have. We're still writing things that no one's going to fucking read.
Right, and I don't think if I was one of them, I wouldn't want to read it. And what is that gonna reading that him saying, I was misled, Hawk, I'd be like, who the hell's Hawk? Like,
One-
I mean, they didn't. I mean, well, I guess they knew, but
And they already know that Harold's ledger is so filled with hate and bile.
Yeah, why would they?
and just lies and just I mean,
Well, and Stu still ends up feeling like he wants to avenge Harold as much as he wants to avenge anyone.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think
he'd known him for so long, and he saw him when he was a pimply-faced,
Right.
overprotective dork, and he sort of, I feel like maybe there's a small part of Stu that feels like maybe I could have, maybe I could have helped usher him down a different path. Too,
yeah,
because
I think Larry feels that way.
Yeah,
too.
Larry feels that way too, and that I know we've talked about this in the podcast before, but it's so I'm always very struck. Just many parts of Harold's story always really hit me, but I always get very struck by just the disappointment Larry probably feels because he thought Harold was so he thought of him as such a hero, and then to kind of witness this. The reality and the downfall and all these things, the disappointment he must feel is to me a very melancholy kind of thing.
yeah. But I also think like we said with Harold, it speaks volumes of the Harold that could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, Larry saw him, and he did all these great things on the trip, and he was so smart, and he potentially led a lot of people via his notes and things on barn doors and whatnot. Led a lot of people probably to safe passage to Boulder, and it's just sad that he had so much hate in him.
Have any of you watched The Good Place? First of all, you should. It's fucking amazing. Second, that's you too out there. You should watch The Good Place. It's great. You can catch up now. It'll be back
Is
next
that the
season.
show with Ted Danson and
And
Kristen
Kristen
Bell?
Bell.
Oh,
It's
no,
great.
no, yeah.
It's Michael Schur who ran Parks and Rec. Anyway, there's the central concept is that when you die, there's essentially a ledger of all your deeds, and this is mostly played for laughs. But it's held up the line at a pizza place because I couldn't decide on ingredients, and that gets you negative 17 points. Or didn't talk to people about your exercise regimen, that gets you 150 points. But it feels a little bit like that would sort of apply to Harold, right? If we were going to try to break down all of Harold's deeds, would it be a net positive or a negative? He blew up. Killing Nick Andros is a great big negative.
That's
but if you
negative
think
3,000 points.
all of the people that he guided out of loneliness and despair and potentially death into someplace safe through his actions, it just makes you wonder, all those individual little lives, that small gesture, do those tiny things all add up to cancel out this one big thing?
Well, I think if you're viewing it as a civilian in Boulder or a civilian in general, probably maybe not. But if you're viewing it from Mother Abigail's God, who knew that he was only doing all that to deceive them, and then eventually, well, I guess he didn't really deceive them until he was at Boulder.
No, yeah.
I guess all that stuff was really well intentioned from the get go.
The sign on the farm and the sign at Stovington and the signs on the highway, I think that was all genuine.
Yeah.
I mean, and granted, he's trying to impress Franny through a lot of it, but it was still. I would argue he probably saved more people than he killed. He may have killed a few of the people he saved too in the house, because it's I love how it's Sue Stern, Nick Andrews, and then a bunch of people we don't give a shit about.
People that we've heard about.
Well, no, what's funny is one of them is Teddy Wyzak, but King sure doesn't kill him in the movie because he's playing him. And
my rule is I don't die.
it's funny too because I read this interview with King that was saying he wrote the explosion at Harold and Nadine's bomb. He wrote that at a point where he was suffering writer's block for the book and he couldn't figure out how to get out of it. And he said, all I need to do is kill half of my main cast to do it. And I'm like, no, you killed two. You killed one really main character and one kind of main character.
Yeah.
Maybe he meant the fallout from Harold and Nadine, but I was like, no, dude, you put a bunch of straw men in there that we didn't give a shit about.
Yeah, but Nick's a big enough character that
He is. He left
Well,
it
and I
lose a
really
void.
like Susan too.
Sue's starting
you know,
to-
a smaller character, but
She becomes a composite character in the movie. She's not bad. It's actually Mick Garris's wife. She's quite good as Sue Stern, but as a character, she doesn't have the strength that she does in the novel, unfortunately.
Speaking of strength, I think there's a real robustness to the structure.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
Structure is almost kind of like we've gone back to the Bible. Like now that everybody's on a journey again, you know, it's like this. I mean, everybody is pretty much with that we continue with. You know, we've got the 4 on the journey to Vegas. We've got Nadine and Harold on their journey to Vegas. We've got the spies, and then even after the fact, when we've got Stu and Tom on the way back. And it's like the things that they endure and the things that they have to do to you know I guess, well, not Nadine and Harold, but to prove themselves.
Well, there's such a relentless momentum to the third book that I feel like was really missing in the second book, which is purposeful, absolutely, because they were settling in the second book. So it's naturally going to be, a slower journey. But in the third book, I feel like the only, because it's not like there's a lot of time that goes by once they arrive in Vegas. Then they're thrown in jail cells. Flag comes to visit them. Glenn gets killed.
It's within a day, right?
It's so quickly. And then the only real moments of, I feel like, stasis that we get is Viz sitting with Stu in the break in the highway or wherever, that hole that he's in with Kojak. Because those scenes are almost hard because you do feel the sense of like move, stop sitting there. If you sit there, you're going to die, because the whole everyone else is constantly moving throughout that.
I love it's weird. I love the structure of this third book because, like I said before, I think it redeems some of the more sluggish aspects of book 2. However, you guys talked about how it's pretty much the Vegas section of the book. Even though we don't see the free zone until Stu, Tom, and Kojak get back. Like, we don't see anything in the free zone at all. We have no idea what's going on back there until they get back. We don't know if the baby's born. We don't know if it's healthy, blah, blah, blah. I do love all that. What you guys said before about, we get to see the goodness of some of the people in Vegas. I agree with that. I still wish we had more of it. Yeah. If book 2 is the Boulder Free Zone book and book 3 is the Vegas book, and we're not going to intertwine the two, I wish Vegas was a little bit more well balanced than it is right now. And we do see a little bit of Vegas, I think, in book 2, right?
Only a little bit, just with Trash.
And they even do because Trash Can Man has that realization that you guys had of wow, these people are all really nice, and then a few pages later they do the crucifixion. Yeah. And I just wish I wish book 3, as much as it moves and as much as by that point, because of the god awful free zone committee stuff, you're anxious for it to get going and get to the climax. I do think Vegas gets a little bit of the short end of the stick, but I wouldn't feel that way if book 2 wasn't so long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think reading it for the first time, the surprise that not everybody there was Lloyd, and then also that there were sort of untold depths for Lloyd, was enough of a surprise for me that it felt really big.
So you didn't
the fact that there were kids there, like that alone,
and they're all dead.
Yeah, I know.
Little Denny, more like little Deddy, because he's
oh boy,
blown to smithereens. Sorry, Denny.
Blown to smithereens.
I like to think Denny got out.
Yeah, Denny.
Anyway, that there are nice people, that the people that Denny loves are Tom Cullen and Lloyd. Those details to me were so surprising that it really felt like a big revelation. Like, I wasn't expecting it. It's painted, and the fact that they choose Las Vegas, right? It's painted so much as like the city of light and the city of darkness, that when we were finally getting to spend time there, I expected everybody to be terrible. But really, it's like Julie Lowry is terrible.
Oh, your favorite.
And we get a little more Julie in this.
And so that for you makes...
Got some pound cake on her.
Oh, man. So that for you makes up for the imbalance a little bit of Vegas being, I guess, more of a condensed section than Boulder. Like there are enough surprises in Vegas to where the length doesn't bother you, as opposed to where with Boulder where there's like no surprises. And it's
Yeah,
just,
I tore through book 3.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this is a kind of maybe a weird way to describe it, but for me, there's like a sweatiness to book 3. It's like I felt it moves at such a fast pace, and even when it's not moving at a fast pace, and you're dealing with Stu baking in the sun. He's got a fever. He's like running a fever. He's got a broken leg. I remember it's like there's this sense of this perspiration and like body odor kind of sense to book 3. I know that's totally crazy, but it's
Well,
like
because Trash Can Man on
yeah,
the
that's what I
four-wheel.
was right about to get
Overripe
to that too.
bananas.
Yes,
Ugh.
it's like
Everyone's baking.
Everyone's baking in the sun. Like literally, Trash Can Man is literally like his skin is peeling off.
And
That's true.
Nadine.
Nadine too. The way they describe that is like horrifying. Like the way that they describe what's happening to Nadine's
When in
body.
her white hair too
Yeah.
against the pink skin. Ugh.
Yeah, it's like so nasty, and then just obviously the description, which we'll get to, of her and Flag's consummation.
Man.
Everybody seems to be in massive amounts of pain, like throughout the third book, and toil, and it's and even the deaths themselves are really gruesome. The way Judge Ferris dies, the way Flag kills Bobby Terry, which we'll get to in the cemetery.
Even Glenn too. There's a
Glenn.
lot of that.
Dana.
His face disappears.
Dana's
Dana's death.
Dana's death is so gross the way they describe it. It's like there's just this sense of I guess that's what I like about book 3 in a lot of ways, is that it's gruesome, it's sweaty, it's fast, it's like the heartbeat is racing during it, and I like you said, I devoured the third book. Yeah.
Bloodletting. I do want to say one quick. I know we don't have a ton to talk about structure wise for this one, but there's one thing that's kind of the opposite of that. It's not till the very. It's the Stu and Tom chapters, which are the dust has settled, and I didn't notice this when I was younger when I read it, but I love the scenes of them holed up in the motel watching. Was it Rambo 1 or is it First Blood, or is it like one of the other
I think
Rambo
it's a sequel.
movies?
I think it's First Blood Part 2.
I love that, best title. But there's something I love about. There's always to me with King does this so well in all of his books, even his lesser ones. He describes characters doing tasks and manual labor so well, and just Stu, who's still kind of maimed at that point. Him having to haul this projector out and get this snowmobile started, and then teach Tom how to do some of this stuff. There's something I love at that point, because book 3's moved so fast, of them just doing these very common tasks, but it being very difficult. And then I don't know, man. I love being holed up during the winter watching movies, and there's just that like reward for that.
Yeah.
Like, man, these guys get to enjoy a nice Christmas together, and they're watching Rambo,
And it feels like a reward. Like they really
I
earned
love
that.
that.
Yeah,
It's so good. Yeah.
Well, that sort of ties in with the thought that I had structurally, which it wasn't until after I finished it that these things popped out at me. But it feels like in book 3, there's a lot of there are a lot of parallels between individual stories. Like this, what Stu goes through is the long version of what Harold goes through.
With the leg, you mean?
Yeah. And being like stuck and in one place, even though you know that disaster is coming for you, and like, what can you do? And they make different choices. And how much of what Stu decides to do comes out of discovering Harold. Dana and Nadine's deaths are sort of oddly similar.
With the window,
With the
too.
window,
I thought about that.
It feels a little bit like Trash Can Man and Tom Cullen have kind of a similar thing where they're both racing. They have a realization in some part, like primal part of their brain, that they can't completely understand. And they have to race forward to whatever it is they're being called to do.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I found that so neat. Like it was just, and it wasn't overwhelming. It didn't hit me over the head. It again didn't occur to me until after I finished the book and I was sort of reflecting on the individual characters, and then these parallels started to pop out. And I find that really wonderful.
No, that's a great, and it's funny too, because the characters you all compared, they're one of them is from the Free Zone and one of them is from Vegas, and that it's. Man, that's super. I'm sorry, I never realized that. I thought about the window thing being similar, but even if you think thematically, they're both female characters who tricked Flag and are doing things that he didn't foresee coming. Like and Tom and Trash, like both answering to a higher power they don't understand, and that's like a really good
with the women.
observation.
It's also after sexual encounters that they find. In one case, like debilitatingly terrifying, and in the other just incredibly
Gross.
unwelcome, but
Yeah.
like participated in willingly
Yeah.
because it
If
means to him.
I know we have some listeners who are professors and teachers, which is awesome, who teach King in their class. So maybe that's something to put in the study guide for The Stand. If you're teaching The Stand, kudos to you. Awesome.
I suspect that if anybody's listening is teaching The Stand right now, they're going, well, yeah.
I didn't know. I the only thing I thought was the window thing with Dana and Nadine, but thematically I didn't think of any of that till you just said it. So that's awesome. I think.
Oh, and the other one that occurred to me was Glenn and Whitney having like a similar
Oh, yeah.
standing up, and they're again from opposite camps.
Oh,
See, I like this.
Yeah, no.
Only Glenn's last name would need to be Borgin or something.
It's funny because if only Harold had a dog and a Tom, you know, like maybe he wouldn't have blown his head off, you know. Maybe
Trash Can Man finds Harold. It's just like the most fucked up chapter. You're like, ugh.
Harold and Trash Can Man coming this fall.
That's sort of a funny thing. Like, I guess that's another thing I like about book 3. I don't know if this really necessarily ties into structure, but we get to see certain characters together that we never thought we'd see together, and that's like a really fun moment. Like, I love sort of even the tension of just seeing like Julie Lowry and Lloyd Henry together. You know, it's like these characters that come from, we've met them in such different ways, and then you bring them in together. So watching Tom Cullen engage with, you know, any number of the people from Vegas,
Right.
and the way that they're actually pretty nice to him, aren't they?
I was gonna say I really wanted to see like Lloyd and Tom like hang out because doesn't Denny say that his two favorite people are Tom and Lloyd?
Yeah.
Which I was like, that also puts Lloyd in another light for me.
Yeah.
Which was like,
He
wow,
says
like
that he
maybe
loves
on
it.
some other plane of existence they would
Well,
have.
you know, it's like, I think with Lloyd too, I think being in a situation like this where he has power and he's kind of overseeing a community to some kind of degree, I think it's bringing out, because he says that he loves the fact that the kids are that there's educational opportunities for the kids, and that he takes a lot of pride in that, and then also that he gets along so well with the children. I think it's just sort of, you know, it's bringing out this inner caregiver in him, because he's not he's a sadist when we first meet him. Like,
he's a
nasty,
nightmare, yeah.
but he's very level-headed and very put together when we encounter him in the third book.
But Randall, you need to write a play like the lead scene from The Stand. It's Tom and Lloyd babysitting Denny for an afternoon. It's just the two of them watching, like, talk about life and stuff. And
It's like
that's a very Twin Peaks moment.
I was literally right about to say it's like Dick Tremaine and Andy Brennan with little Nicky. It's like
It really
literally
is.
the worst storyline
Like-
in Twin Peaks.
Like if The Stand was ever an HBO, you know how on a lot of really good television shows, like in Breaking Bad, you have the Fly episode, which is kind of a short play in itself.
Oh,
and then-
don't you talk shit about the
and-
Fly to me.
No.
great.
I love it.
Oh,
I love
good,
it. No, I love
good.
it. And on Girls, you have the Boys episode, and you also have the Patrick Wilson
Oh,
episode.
we talking about bottle episodes?
Bottle
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah, there were some great ones.
If they did a Stan miniseries for HBO, not even a miniseries. I argued that you could do probably a 3-season series on
Yeah.
the Stan.
Oh, yeah,
You
I
do
agree.
that, and it's like so true to the book, except they have one bottle episode. It's just like Tom and Lloyd, like, yeah, Denny sure is a little scamp, isn't he? Like, let's go scamp. Oh, Lloyd, you son of a bitch.
It'll start with the theme from Saved by the Bell, the college years. You know?
Weird.
No, you know, I honestly think something like that could work, and I'm going to start talking about The Handmaid's Tale again because it's on my brain all the time now. But something that adaptation is doing that's really interesting is that that's not a long book, and it's going to be at least 2 seasons because it's already renewed.
Yeah.
Because Hulu's not stupid, and they have a giant hit finally, and so they're not an idiot. But with Margaret Atwood's input and blessing and participation, they're sort of expanding on the world of the novel. So things are happening in the series that happen pretty late in the book to some of the characters who, after it happens, then you don't see them again. But we're getting backstory on them as well as what happens to them after they disappear from this one character's perspective in the novel. We're getting lots of scenes from before the transformation of government and before the implementation of the system. And it's great. It's incredibly rich. It's like the best bonus content you could ever want because none of it feels extraneous. It all just feels like some novels are better when they're a little bit lean. And my God, I don't think The Stand could be any longer. But with characters this well developed, certainly a series could be longer.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
If you
that's
can
like
take your time, you get to learn more about
Yeah.
people. And
What you're saying about Handmaid's Tale is like The Leftovers too, because The Leftovers is like 300-page book at most, and they made 3 seasons out of it because they did exactly that.
It might be
Collaborated.
4.
Oh, really?
It's supposed to be the last season, but Damon Lindelof did an interview with a couple of weeks ago, I think, with Matt Zoller Seitz, and in the interview, he was like, "Hey, just so you know, I got a call today that this might not be the last season," and that call happened the day that your piece came out about why we should have leftover season 4. So it might be you, right? So it might be because Matt Zoller Seitz wrote this piece about how we needed a leftover season 4, and now we might get one.
Hey,
That scares
critics
me
matter, I guess.
because I love Leftovers.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, maybe it should have just been 3 seasons. Like, what if 4 just
I
is
don't
not
know.
good?
I mean, 3 has been incredible.
No, I love 3 so far.
I
But
think they're on a roll.
I want 10 seasons of The Stand.
Look, man, you do,
I want a whole
hey,
season devoted to Julie
we see a spinoff, Denny's
fuck you,
Adventure,
Riddle.
Denny's Adventures in the Desert, Desert Adventures because he escaped. He's not. Yeah, he's
Okay, what's one thing, just one thing you would want to see in a 10-season Stand series?
I've said this before. I would love an episode where we see some of the people who didn't go to Flag or Mother Abigail, just what's happening. Maybe it's overseas even. I don't know. The book, for as epic as it is, it's very insular in that it only deals with people who went to these 2 camps. I would love to see the an episode about survivors who are like, I'm not gonna go to fucking Boulder or Vegas. Like I don't like these dreams. I'm just gonna go
You know what
to
episode I would
CSAT.
want is one whole episode devoted to Harold Lauder after his parents and sister die and before he hooks up with Franny.
Oh,
Yes,
that'd be great.
yes.
That'd be
Oh,
so
I want that now.
Yeah.
Dan, don't worry, because if The Stand's a hit, you're gonna get a second series, spin-off,
totally.
like The Walking Dead did, where it's like, oh, well, what happened to these people on the other side? It was like all the same shit, like it's just gonna be the same.
It'll
thing.
be called Fear the Stand.
They need to have like Flag's like twin brother or something leading people, and he's like,
Oh
he's
boy, like what?
he's like,
what
I'm Randolph Bagg.
the Flag you didn't know.
Yeah, like he's just like the goofy sidekick, but yeah.
Well, now that we're talking about fictional characters, maybe we should talk about some real characters in a little section we like to call Zeros and Villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Let's just talk about Randall Flagg.
I think it's a good idea.
It's so interesting to me because, again, I grew up with the miniseries and where he is very much an otherworldly creature who honestly, even in his entrance, you just think he's just appeared. He's not been here before. He's just appeared now, and now he's going to be like on this little journey. In the book, it's so strange. I mean, we have these chapters with him in book 3 where we kind of know that he's been around. Like he was born and has been living on this earth, and he's always had these kind of strange powers, and can levitate, but only do some bits and pieces of magic. I don't know. It's a very strange character.
Because what are his powers confirmed to be? He can levitate. He can
turn things into keys.
He can. It's like
he can.
If you had a trading card, it's like powers: levitation, transmogrification, turning things into keys. No, but he does he actually become a crow, or does he just go into like a crow or a wolf or whatever?
No, he can turn into it.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, I think he can.
Oh, he's got feathers on.
Well, because when he meets up with
but he also can send his eye out like Sauron in Lord of the Rings. Like he can. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what's interesting to me is because to me, I always pictured Flagg as this like the villain. Mm-hmm. And I also did in the Dark Tower, but we'll jump to the Dark Tower later. But because of that, all that talk about like how the ever-seeing eye, and like, oh, I could feel him watching me like from, Vegas, et cetera, et cetera. But when we see his character through his eyes, he's always like, oh, I can only levitate like I'm an inch off the ground today. He doesn't seem very all-knowing, all evil. He seems very human, and in a way, I like that because it's kind of creepy.
He's very fallible.
And when Glenn sees him finally, he's like, "This is a joke. We've been afraid of you, and you're just some joker with a jean jacket."
It's funny because all right, I'm going to try and say this without spoiling too much in the Dark Tower for those of you who haven't read it, but if you have, maybe. I don't know. Don't listen to this part.
Jump a couple minutes.
Because of something that happens to Flagg in the Dark Tower series. He's in it quite a bit, but because of this one specific thing that happens, there are a lot of fans who have a problem with that. And their reasoning is like you just said. Oh, he's supposed to be King's big baddie, and this dumb thing happens to him. Now, I see where that's coming from because growing up, I always associate him as the ultimate, manifestation of evil. However, rereading it, I think in the third book, he's very much presented as the Tin God. He's presented as having all these flaws. And so going back to what happens in the Dark Tower, this one event I'm talking about, it doesn't bother me as much. I'm like, I actually think he set the stage pretty well for that. And like Mother Abigail, his downfall is pride. He assumes he's going to know everything that happens, and he doesn't. He assumes that people are going to listen to him, and they don't. And it almost does become laughable the last half of the book, like nothing's going right for him. What do you guys think about that?
To me, he seemed kind of like a Rumpelstiltskin, right?
Yeah.
At one point, Mother Abigail calls him an imp, and maybe that's kind of what put it in my head. But part of what made book 3 so satisfying was the fact that he was able to occasionally be outsmarted, despite his abilities, his otherworldly abilities. The fact that that they sent Tom Cullen, whose mind can't be penetrated in the same way, and who someone like Flagg would obviously dismiss as being not a threat. The fact that Dana is able to outsmart him in her final moments and to see through, and we'll get to Dana.
I love
we'll
Dana.
get to Dana.
Yeah.
But that she's able to see through this ruse that he concocts for her.
Even Harold, because Harold does things that Flagg doesn't expect. That's not part of the plan.
Yeah.
And so does Nadine.
And it feels like a little bit like Rumpelstiltskin being tricked into someone that seems like he's got it all figured out, and there's a trap that can't be broken, and something as simple as a trick could throw him not only off his path to victory, but into a temper tantrum. Every time Flagg has a temper tantrum, it's kind of scary, but mostly really satisfying. Because it's like a child having a fit because he doesn't get his way, and it makes him less scary, more interesting, but less scary. And to me, I prefer that anyway.
Reminds me of someone else I know right now.
Who, Kylo Ren?
Exactly.
It's really like it's like he, with this whole situation in the stand, what's kind of funny about it is it's almost like he bit off more than he could chew. You know?
Yeah.
Well, because you have to remember too, he isn't the one who causes Project Blue to happen. He takes advantage of it.
He's
for sure.
opportunistic,
He's
yeah.
very opportunistic, and he takes advantage of chaos and his, the way the Joker is like an agent of anarchy. But if you think about his ultimate control, he's a showman. He's taking advantage of things, but he's not. I think in the beginning of the first two books, we think he is, because we haven't seen things from his point of view. We haven't seen him fail yet. We think he is the ultimate. I would say something like a creature like Pennywise is more of the ultimate personification of evil and fear. But even him, his questionable downfall it has to do with dismissing things that you think are weaker than you and they're actually not. And also too, I think the issue though with Flagg is that there is some conflicting history for people who've read him in other books, and I think this once again just comes from King retconning things. Like I don't think Flagg was supposed to be Flagg in a lot of these other books he appears in, and if you read the Dark Tower series, you eventually find out like the exact childhood of Flagg and where he came from and grew up. But here, he doesn't remember where he's from. He has these vague memories.
And that to me is also a whole Beam thing. Like on this path, this version of Flagg, maybe he's existing in multiple planes at the same time or something, and that's why his memory is so scattered. But that's getting onto a whole other thing. I will say also with Flagg though, I thought it was interesting that even King, in the Anchor books page, thank you, Mike. I think it's page 982.
The one with the cover that looks like World War II.
I think it's page 982. King, and Flagg's thinking this, but he thinks it's here where I'll make my stand. He's also making a stand, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, he says those words. I mean, he senses like anyone else that this big event is about to happen. How do you guys feel? This, I mean, it's such an afterthought almost, because I still think I like Stu and Franny's conversation as being the final note of the book. But how do you feel about that added epilogue with Flagg waking up on the beach essentially meeting a group of natives, recognizing that he can control them, and then at the end you get the idea that this will start over again? Like, I don't know, does that add anything to the book for you guys, or is it just kind of a little fun thing at the end?
I always love when any piece of art ends with some sort of like zing that tells you what's next, even if we don't see it. So in that respect, I like it, but I wish it had been one sentence long. It's not like King doesn't know how to craft a sentence that's so good that you don't need anything else. Like if it had been the children were on the beach and a dark man walked toward them, all of this would happen again or something like that, right? I mean, that's a shitty sentence, but if he had found some way to compress that epilogue into like a sentence, 2 sentences, maybe a paragraph, then I would have been all for it.
Yeah.
But to me, it felt a little bit like it overstayed its welcome.
Yeah, I think King definitely figures that out later on in other books. He kind of does that with a particular book. I don't want to give it away.
I know what you're it's
but
great.
yeah, for me, I always kind of loved that, and I was actually really looking forward to reading it because I think Justin had told me a long time ago before I had read the book that actually happens. I think it was like after we saw the miniseries. Because I was like, well, he flies away. What happened? And then, he was like, oh, well, actually, in the uncut version. But to me, like you were just saying, Dan, it kind of takes away from it because if he is just like this guy that's taking advantage of the situation, then him like lording himself over these natives that don't understand the power or are confusing him. And like all of this is going to happen again makes it sound like he was the reason why all of it happened in the first place.
Yeah,
And it's like,
exactly.
no, he's just like, yeah, he's going to take advantage of these people. And I guess it's saying like, well, the Dark Man still exists because good still exists. And it's very legend in that way. And that's cool. And I do like it. And I like that artwork at the end. But for me, I feel like ending with the Stu Franny, are we ever going to learn anything? Are we ever going to change? And then the whole, I don't know, is much more of a, to me, is like a great button ending.
Yeah.
I don't know if you needed the extra.
Because Flag doesn't appear in this book until after the Superflu is already in place. Like, it's not like... I mean, in the miniseries, you see the Crow land near Project Blue, which is the very first scene where everything gets kicked off. But even that's just kind of more of a nod than anything. Whereas with this, it's like... I love that he kind of has to wait for this horrible, cataclysmic event to awaken in a way. I mean, he's already woken, but to make himself known. And yeah, that's a good point. Like with this, it's like, oh, okay, is he gonna kick? I don't know. Is he gonna like start everything bad in the society?
I think that maybe that would have resonated with me more if he'd been able to tie them together, right? Like if what we leave the Stu and Franny chapter with is the notion that we'll never learn anything, and then what we see instead of people who can't understand him, people who are pre-language. If instead it was another situation of chaos where some sort of epic tragedy has caused the downfall of society and in walks a force of evil to bring out the worst in people, then that would hit me differently. Instead, it just felt like, ooh, just look what's going to happen. And yeah, I think that maybe if we had ended on humans are the worst enemies of humans, but there's also this force that can make things that much worse, that would have hit me harder, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I've just always seen it as, cause a wheel. And,
Hey, it is, right? We'll save that for King's Dominion. Just a little one.
Yeah, and I had another thing too. The dreams. People see Mother Abigail, people see the Dark Man, but does Mother Abigail, is she visiting them in these dreams? Does she remember these people? She doesn't remember the dreams that they have of her.
No.
And
I
talking
don't think
to
we
them.
get into the logistics of the dreams.
Right. So like, it's not like even he, like you said, like when he shows up, he has to wait for the plague to pretty much take its toll before he starts really making his moves and, gathering his army. But even when the dreams start to really take place, it's after the shit's hit the fan.
But we get the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I read this wrong, but that Nadine, as an example, was always going to get what happened to her, right?
Yeah.
Like from the time she was a small child, she was somehow headed towards this dark figure.
And that's something you guys talked a lot about this last episode about. Something like the idea of predestination has always bugged me a little bit, especially with Nadine's character, like the fact that she was doomed, even despite being somewhat of a good person. But even with that, and the way she sees Flag through the Ouija board or whatever else when she was younger is similar to how people see him in the dreams early on. Because early on, he's almost more impressionistic. It's like this idea of a shape or something following you.
Yeah, they can't really see his face.
Exactly, yeah. And then later on, it becomes like, oh, it's the walking dude and it's Vegas. So I think you're right on the money in that the thing almost has to happen in full effect for him to gain his power, which maybe points to how maybe that's why he's weak compared to the actual devil or something like that. I know you mentioned before how he was the one who got pushed into the pen of pigs, which is from the Bible.
Legion, yeah.
So does that, because and there's another thing where he says something like, "I'm John the Conqueror." There's a couple times where he refers to himself from a specific event from the Bible or from history. Does all that line up? Like, I guess is that whoever the character is that gets pushed into the pen
it's
of
not
pigs.
really a character. It's just like the name Legion is
We are many.
It just means that like we as demons we are one.
So
like,
he's a demon then.
Essentially, what this book posits through, if you want to trust Tom Cullen, from what Tom says in When He's Hypnotized, is that he essentially confirms that Randall Flagg is not Satan but a demon because basically Jesus cast out a demon from within a man into a herd of pigs and they ran off a cliff. And that doesn't mean that the demons died. It just means that the demons can take different shapes and
Well, because he's also but he is a sorcerer, as you know from the Dark Tower, who had like an actual childhood. So I always wonder, like, okay, is it implying that he's this time traveling, dimension traveling magician who takes up league with the devil, or is it like he's an actual demon? Or I don't know.
And that was my thing with the whole parallel universe, Thinnies and all whatnot. I think maybe there's a dark man in every universe that's born, has a life, and then when he comes to the realization of his evilness, he's like, I have gone by many other names. Like, maybe he didn't particularly personally live out that life in that other parallel universe, but he knows that he went by Randall Flagg and that,
like a shared
maybe,
mind.
yeah, it's like a shared,
Yeah, I think it's like
network or something.
I'm Legion, we are,
yeah, absolutely.
My name is Legion, we are many. Like I think what Randall Flagg is probably constitutes multiple beings.
I think Mac is our resident beamologist.
Seriously, thank you.
Yeah.
Another note I just remembered in the epilogue, Flagg says, "I've come to teach you how to be civilized," is what he says. And I think in terms of the themes we are discussing, the idea of civilization as a destructive force, the difference between community and society, I think that in a way is King sort of hitting home that theme, that idea of like, I've come to teach you how to be civilized, and thus, like that is in itself a form of evil.
Even though he's probably going to show them structure and progress and whatever else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Randall Flagg is real, and I think that we're all in agreement that he is a real person,
I mean,
a real demon in life. He's just around. Then I just want to say there's a reason that I have always mistrusted Roberta Flack and Rafe Fiennes.
Oh, the little RF, because it is always like Robert Fry, Rafe
Robert
Fiennes.
Frost.
Robert Frost.
Fuck that guy.
Faraday.
Ralph Faraday, or Daniel Faraday from Lost.
Well, they said that they took that name from because they're
that's
big
right,
Stephen King
that.
fans.
That's right.
But
they should have just made Lost like they should have just made whatever the fuck his name is. Jacob. Who's Tobin Bell's not on Lost, right?
Tobin Bell.
No. Isn't Jacob in the Saw movies though? The guy who plays
No.
Ben Linus, who he's in the Saw
movie.
movie.
The first Saw movie.
Whatever him. What if they just revealed like, oh, he's Randall Flagg? Like that's the twist in Lost or something.
That would have been absurd.
But he's kind of not. Fuck.
Well, the Man in Black is Bosch.
Who's Bosch? Which one?
Oh yeah, the Man in Black is Bosch.
Titus Welliver.
Man, I watched most
Titus
of
Welliver.
Lost and I can't remember that show.
I stand by.
Hey Dan, hand me the book real quick.
That's Randall standing
Standing
by Lost.
It was the Twin Peaks of our time.
Can you pass the Anthem, whatever fuck edition it is?
Yeah, the Anchor Books.
This is the Anchor Books.
The one with World War II looking cover.
What else do we think about Randall Flagg? Do we have any other thoughts? There's so much. I mean, obviously, we're going to discuss him in future episodes.
Honestly, and I don't know him personally, but he sounds like a jerk. That's a little nod to Norm.
No, Norm Macdonald.
So yeah, what about the rest of you? What other characters do? I'm sure Allison loves Julie Lowry's MVP for. No, just kidding.
Why don't you talk about Dana? I'm excited to hear your take.
The anti-Julie Lowry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want a spy show that's just Dana.
Yeah.
It felt like that chapter was so exhilarating and terrifying and kind of fun. she, especially knowing Dana's backstory, it felt so righteous, and it was. I think that it's an incredible piece of writing, and and all of a sudden you're in another genre, and it totally works. But it's all great. Her seeing Tom and trying to puzzle out like why on earth would they do that? They would never do that. I can't be seeing this correctly, and then slowly coming to understand why that might have happened and what it means. But especially her confrontation with Flag and watching her knowing she's being manipulated and figuring out what he's doing and why, and noticing all of the things that give it, the tiniest tells that give it away. I just thought that was incredible. And it's her character through that whole sequence is crystal clear. I feel like I understand everything that's going on with her. It feels like if we didn't know what happened to her in the zoo, it wouldn't hit nearly as hard. But even if we didn't, it would still be an incredibly entertaining piece of writing that's thrilling and heartbreaking at the end. It might be my favorite section of book 3.
And I think so. I think, like, in that sense, too, it's one of the times when I think we see Flag at his most cunning. Like, we start to see, like, the powers that he really does have. Like, when he fails, but at the same time, that sense of, like, manipulating someone and sending little pinpricks into their mind and, like, trying to get inside someone's mind, and the hypnotizing aspect of his gaze, and just, like, the sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Just like the intimidation that he can exude.
Well, because there's a point. I love that exchange they have, because for the first half of their conversation, she is really content. She's like, "Oh, I get to go home, cool." And then she has a second where she realizes what he's doing.
Well, and throughout it, there are these moments where she keeps thinking, "This can't be. This isn't right. Something about this isn't right." Even as she starts to feel more and more comfortable and optimistic, and then it's that moment when he tells Lloyd to get fuck you, Stephen King. When he tells Lloyd to get her bike ready, and then just a couple of minutes later messages him again and says never mind to wait because they have something else to discuss, and he's there. She's like, everyone here is terrified of you. He wouldn't still be there. Yeah, I know exactly what you're doing. When she calls it a one-act play, I think that it is just great.
She's so
I can't
awesome.
wait to cast this when we do that. I cannot wait.
God,
I have so many ideas about Dana.
Would you say that Dana's your favorite female character in the book?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I think Franny
not...
is incredibly empathetic, and we spend so much more time with her. I think that Nadine is really compelling for all of the pitfalls in the writing. Many think of which he actually dodges, but some of which feel a bit sad. I like Lucy. There are other characters that I find. No, I hate Julie Lowry. Fuck Julie Lowry. But I think that my favorite piece of writing for a female character in the book is this section of Dana's.
Yeah. And that like kills me because I love Dana, and the fact that we get her and only get her at the end. But it's probably one of my favorite parts of the book. It's like King realized, oh, I've got this great character, and it's like, man, we should have introduced her in like book 1, you know, but no, she's great, and I just love, you know, in the miniseries, I love that scene as well. It's actually one of my favorite scenes in the miniseries,
and I like Kelly Overby is, I think, pretty good as Dana. She doesn't get nearly as much to do, which is the problem. But I do like her as Dana.
I think that they do a good job with that scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they kind of change a little bit of it, but it all works.
It's close to.
So getting there in the book, I was really excited to read that, and it's obviously a little bit meatier in the book, so that was really nice too, as short as it is. But yeah, just man, seeing her conversation with Flag is just great because, like you said, she knows like what's going on. I mean, I think there's probably a little part of her that was dying to go home that wants to believe that maybe, you know, but like she knows that that's it. And the fact that she does what she does in order to, because she knows that if she stays alive and if she, you know, she's going to give Tom up. And the fact that she goes out the way she does is like, kills me.
And I love too that so she bursts through the glass, impales herself in the glass, and she's still alive. And there's a sentence about how all she has to do is tilt her head to the right just a little bit to sever her jugular vein, and which is so gross. But I love that it's just this slight thing that frustrates Flag. Like, oh, all she had to do was this, and then it just sets him off, like you guys said about
and goes on the
temper
tantrum.
tantrums before. Yeah, the tantrum.
Which that in the miniseries isn't done well, but
yeah, in the miniseries. Well,
we'll get to that later.
Does he turn her arm knife into a banana in the book?
Yes.
Yes. So, really quick, when I was
overripe banana.
An overripe banana.
when I was young, so yeah, the implication is that she has this spring blade on her wrist that it's retractable and she's gonna stab Flag in his stomach.
Well, and
or
I
she's
thought she was gonna stab herself at first.
Yeah. Well, in the miniseries, and they play it just like they do in the book. She goes like, eat this or something, and then it's a banana that she's holding. Now, when I was younger, I thought she went to like cut Flag's dick off, and he turned it into a banana, and then she severed a banana, and she's like, oh, it's a...
Dan, where your mind as a child? Where were you? What were you thinking?
And then when I read the book finally, I'm like, oh, the blade turns into a banana. But I thought it was like she somehow got his dick off. It's like, oh, it's just a banana. but no, that is awesome.
To wrap up Dana on that note, no, she's great. She's great. I wish we could have like a Dana book.
Yeah, hey, who knows?
Another parallel universe Dana. Come on, King.
I would love that. I just love to underline it, just in case this is something that anyone listening hasn't picked up on. The idea that the person who's subjected to the most brutal sexual assault of any character in the book ends up using sex as a weapon to gather information is just astounding to me, and it didn't feel cheap. It didn't feel like it was something he hadn't considered. It felt to me like this is what sex was to her now, and she was going to use it.
Well, because
and I just thought that was remarkable.
Because her having sex with Lloyd is obviously, I mean, it's a big thing, right? Like you're letting the villain enter you. And it's funny because obviously the zoo is not in the miniseries. I could be wrong. I think the zoo may not even be in the original book. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. But you're absolutely right, because when as a kid I was like, oh man, that's like a pretty far step to take for her to help the Free Zone. But because, like you said, sex has been made, I don't want to say it's been meaningless for her at all, because she can still have
I think meaningful, but not something to this. It seemed like just another thing that she could do to accomplish her goal.
It's not
and
sacred.
It wasn't traumatic. It was disgusting. And that I just loved.
I've got some pound cake later on that, and it almost comes from Dana's inner monologue, because it's almost funny how she's looking at Lloyd, and the way she's like faking it too. She's like, oh yeah, Lloyd, like, and you just see him like, oh yeah, it's I don't know, ridiculous.
Yeah, and I got to give it up to the Free Zone Committee, because their scouts were pretty great.
They're great. Yeah.
I mean, like
Judge Ferris.
Hey, you know what? I think if the judge had gained more ground, I think that he would have been a formidable foe.
Even with the judge, the thing that they were correct with all their spies, because although this wasn't their intent was to retrieve information, which doesn't end up happening with any of their spies. But I think the thing, then maybe this goes back to God or goodness's plan a little bit. All the spies threw a wrench in Flag's plan, because Judge Ferris, he gets his face blown off, which is not what Flag predicted, and that sends him into a fury and is kind of the first chink in the armor for Flag. Dana obviously doesn't give up any information, and she bests him. I mean, she dies, but she gets the best of Flag. And then Tom, like, he never figures out. So I think they did a great job choosing their spies, because although they didn't get information to help them destroy Flag, they set off the unpredictability that I think ends up, or they set off Flag's lack of intuition, which ends up destroying him, you know.
And they're distracting Flag too. I mean, the Flag has to go out and, you know, penalize this guy for what happens to the judge, and while he's not there, things are like falling apart at Vegas. And the same thing with when he goes off to meet Nadine. Like, things are falling apart back at Vegas, and, you know, they're like, where's Flag, you know, and like, had he been there? Or like when he comes back, and like Julie, I know we hate Julie, but even when Julie's like, oh hey, I've got this information on Tom, the other spy, and like he's just like can't be bothered because he just came back with his bride, and like, you know, and then finds out after the fact and loses his shit.
Right, well, because she tells Lloyd, okay, Julie Lowry, just real brief, because she doesn't deserve her whole
here we go.
It's just, at least she's shitty in the right way.
Yeah.
In book 3, right? Like, she's exactly the right kind of asshole, and she's so awful that even Lloyd is like, nah, she's the worst.
It doesn't even say like he like notices her physically at first, but then after he's just like, this girl
There's a
sucks.
section where, and Lloyd, also the worst. But there's a moment where he wishes that the woman who's the phone operator, who's all like nice,
that flirts with him.
and has the hots for him,
Yeah.
where he wishes that her personality could be on Julie Lowry's body, where it's like, well, I mean that's terrible of you, but Julie Lowry is so awful that even Lloyd is like, no thanks.
Sucks.
That's true.
But when she comes forward to say like, hey, I spotted this guy who I fucked with once, and then can't even tell the story in a way to get the information across so that it matters to Lloyd.
Sucks.
Like her communication of this vital fact is so self-centered and indulgent and petty that it takes Lloyd, like, I don't know how long it is, days, a long time to be like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. So that's the spy.
Well, because at first Lloyd is just kind of like, what the fuck do I care
Please
about
get
this
to the
thing that
point.
happened
I
in
don't
Kansas?
understand why are you such an asshole. And then like hours later, days later, however long it is, the penny drops and he goes, oh, okay. And then because Tom Cullen is who he is, and because Flagg is so arrogant, even when this information is presented to him in such a fashion that he could, in theory, track Tom Cullen down, he's like, why? You talk about things when I tell you to talk about them. And then when he finds out what it is, he says, why didn't you tell me this?
Yeah.
It's like, what an asshole.
There's a character. We're on Vegas. We need to talk about.
Oh boy.
We've talked about him a lot already, but he makes his proper first appearance here, and that is Ratty Elkins, the Rat Man.
His name is Ratty Elkins.
Isn't it? Don't they? I think they call him Ratty Elkins or something beforehand.
No, I think you're probably right. I just forgot.
Boy,
that.
the Rat Man.
The Rat Man.
We talk about how race is examined a lot. On
Ratty
this podcast.
Irwins.
Ratty Irwins. Now, oh boy. Even if we've talked before about the big problem with race and diversity in The Stand and a lot of early Stephen King books is that it's not that necessarily Mother Abigail is the way she is, it's that she's the only black character, the only prominent black character, and they fall into some of those magical Negro stereotypes. Even if I don't know, even if The Stand had been filled with like all sorts of people of different races and ethnicities, I think the Rat Man would still stick out like a sore thumb because he's not in any of the Vegas stuff up until then.
Up until the very end.
And all his only distinguishing traits is that he's dressing like an Ethiopian pirate.
And he carries a sword.
And he carries this sword, has gold teeth, and he speaks totally like oh, I'm the Rat Man, bold, black, and beautiful.
I have a quote
Holy
here.
shit. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let's just say that Dan and I, and probably you too, Mac, like we all kind of, I don't want to say fell in love with the Rat Man in the miniseries, but the Rat Man is a much more prominent part of the miniseries because they got Rick Avilas
from Ghost and Carlito's Way,
who is a prominent actor and very good actor.
And I think The Stand he died of AIDS, unfortunately, in the 90s. I think The Stand was one of his last roles. I think he was sick during The Stand.
But they make him a more prominent character in The Stand, and but it's pretty awful there too. But
the line. I mean, anyone who's seen the miniseries knows this. Larry Underwood bumps into him in an arcade in Times Square early on for no reason because they only interact at the end. And the Rat Man turns around and sees him, and Larry's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. Man, you guys should have asked Adam Stork about that scene." Now that I'm thinking about it, but he's like, "Well, I'm sorry." And Rick Avilas goes, "The Rat Man forgive you this time." And then it lingers on him for a while. And I remember Randall and Alice and I actually all used to work at Groupon as editors. And when you first got hired there, I don't remember what the context was, but like. We were G-chatting and you said something like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then you were apologizing for something like either we had to like push a lunchtime back, and I was like, "The Rat Man forgive you this time," and I don't think we knew that like we each loved The Stand at that point, and you were like cracking up, like, "Oh my god, like that line is so funny," and I used to always put that as my away message, but
and then I know at least maybe 2 of our followers on Facebook have posted the Rat Man Forgive You This Time YouTube clips on our post before, so we know it's a hit.
And what's funny too, because like freezy this time. Then next time he sees him, like, oh, he smashes his guitar and says, "Disco's dead." And like that's anyway.
And that's in the book, I think, too.
I think
Or maybe not the disco's dead, but I think he says like that white honky voodoo.
He said our honorary Losers Club member Dan Flieger always says like, shut up with that honky voodoo, because it's so every line the Ratman says is like a stereotype in this. And I mean there's not much to say about him as a character, just as like, why the fuck is he in there? Like that could have been any other character in Vegas. I don't know.
I've got a section here.
Right.
Let's read a little bit about that. I was gonna say Mr. Poundcake, but I actually think this works better under character. So Julie Lawry, this is the meeting of the minds here. Julie Lawry approached the Ratman, the only fellow in Vegas she considered too creepy to sleep with, except maybe in a pinch. His black skin glimmered in the blue-white glare of the welding arcs. He was tricked out like an Ethiopian pirate. Wide silk trousers, a red sash, and a necklace of silver dollars around his scrawny neck. "What is it, Ratty?" she asked. "The Ratman don't know, dear, but the Ratman got hisself an idea. Yes, indeedy he does. It looks like black work tomorrow, very black. Like to slip away for a quick one with Ratty, my dear?" And then Julie said, "Maybe, but only if you know what this is all about." "Tomorrow, all of Vegas gonna know," Ratty said. "You bet your sweet and delectable little sugar buns on that. Come along with the Ratman, dear, and he show you the 9,000 names of God."
You know, I didn't get to
Holy
say,
shit.
but if there was going to be a series, that would be my episode. Would be Julie and Ratty. A night out in Vegas.
That's a great bottle episode. Oh my god!
Because it's so. This goes back to that thing we always say about King just taking it like those 5 steps too far. Because, all right, just imagine that conversation happening. He's talking so long. You're like, okay, cool. Holy hell, man. There's not much to say about the Rat. What a weird character. Like, why not make all the stuff that happens to him Ace High or Whitney or any of them like could have done it. Yeah,
it's not even that. It's like Mother Abigail, like you just said, Dan. It's not necessarily that like this. There's no place for a character like this. It's just that there's no other people of color really that we get to see who aren't either magical or deranged in some way. Like it's just a really bizarre character that honestly it's like more. Like the way it's presented in the movie is more responsible.
No, it is. In the movie, at least he's not going on for like 20 lines with it. He's just like, "Yeah, the Ratman forgive you," and like this is Lloyd. He ain't bad for a slice of white bread, and like it's all.
We know Ratman has like 5 or 6 lines in the movie, and we know them all by heart.
Oh, they're great.
I'm the Ratman, bold, black, and beautiful.
We probably spent a lot of time on Ratman.
Yeah, I know. We can move on.
Let's move on.
Let's go to the other side of the track.
I'd say that. Wait, what'd you say, Mac?
I was just saying we can go to the other side of the track and talk about God's Tom.
God's Tom.
Yeah, Tom.
Actually, God's Tom was. I actually found that to be. There is also a little bit of magical, magical Phoebe kind of character going on, to steal Julie Lawry's word for him.
Yeah.
But it's because when he gets hypnotized, suddenly he becomes this kind of voice. And that's another question too. That might be in some places where people are like, well, this is evidence that we are dealing with, a spiritual sort of God because it speaks through Tom. But then, of course, at the same time, he's probably very susceptible. But he is speaking kind of outside of his, he's not saying things he would say if he weren't hypnotized. Mm-hmm. But then he starts quoting the Bible. He speaks about how God speaks to him and everything. And I think that's in book 2. So I'll move to book 3. But I think that section is when Tom, I think, takes on a different kind of dimension, and he becomes more than just sort of. We get good stuff with him when he's with Nick as well, but the character really sort of blossoms once he gets recruited to go into Vegas, and I think it's actually kind of lovely the way his scenes are written in Vegas, because we really see him become part of a community there, and I find it just very interesting that they accept him in Vegas, and that Tom has a way that he has a way that he describes everybody in Vegas. He says, it was as if all these people were wearing happy folks' faces, but their real faces, their underneath faces, were monster faces. He had seen a scary movie about that once. That kind of monster was called a werewolf. I thought that was like a really fascinating look at how Tom is processing from his perspective, what life is like in Vegas.
And the chapters where he where the moon is full and he realizes he has to bike home. And I knew it was going to happen because I've read the book a lot, but I was just rooting for him so much. Like where he goes off the road and he has the intuition to go towards God's finger.
I really like that too. Yeah,
I love that. And you want him to get out so bad. And King really captures this idea of when you're running away from something dangerous or troubling, and then you get to the point where you're safe, because he has that point where Tom realizes that Vegas is far enough behind him now where he feels like, okay, I think I'm fine. The adrenaline in those chapters and just the empathy he has for Tom and the effect that has on the reader, you want him to get out so bad, and he does. And it's once again it's a reward, I think, for the reader. You know?
Yeah, and of all the characters that were sent over there to come back unscathed and get out, it's just. It's kind of it's crazy, but it's so satisfying. And
because he's the one you think wouldn't get back. I mean, if he had stayed not even a day longer, he would have been blown up probably. I think I can't remember what the exact timeline is. And I just love watching. I mean, even rereading Salem's Lot with the Mark Petrie chapters. I love when King focuses on characters and has them being resourceful, and especially if they're like a kid or a mentally challenged person or someone else who you think wouldn't be. King just has such a way with following these people and following the tasks they're doing and their thought process. I don't know, I could read like resourceful King characters for days. I love seeing that in a way much more than his characters sitting around talking.
Yeah, I mean, we're not there yet necessarily, but like in the same way that we see that with Tom, we see that like I just feel like with Trash Can Man, when he's getting the nuke. And how it gets so deep into just the minutia of what it takes to get a nuke
how is he going to get that out of there?
Yeah, that, like what you're saying though, it's like it reveals so much character. But with Tom too, it's like even just the ways that he takes care of Stu and like the little things that he does for him. It's I feel like, and like he's such a presence of purity, especially in the third book, which is filled with so much like violence and tragedy and disappointment and a lot of things. But when it comes back to Tom, there is. Like you said, it's very satisfying for the reader because he is this vessel of purity, and then when he finds Stu, you feel like Stu's going to be okay.
Yeah, and then just all of the chapters where, and they cover this a little bit in the miniseries, and I don't want to talk about that too much, but you know, in the book, just being able to go into that a little bit more about his journey with Stu, going out and checking all the cars and coming back, you know, and it's really interesting to see him. He does really blossom in these chapters, and. It's also one really interesting thing to me is towards the very end when Tom and Stu make it back to Boulder. And I've got this written down. It's in page 1129. He says, I think it's the Anchor Books edition paperback. He says, "We're in Boulder again," Tom murmured softly. "We really are. CITYLIMITS. That spells Boulder. Laws, yes." Whereas I don't think does he always spell out other things? He always spells out moon. And maybe is it because the moon mission? It's not even because he was doing moon before the moon mission even became a thing. So what is he trying to say with this now? Like, is he learning? Is he like?
I think it's just a little moment of his mind expanding a little bit after what he's been through.
and I just that really hit me, and I really like that because I mean I don't know, it was just kind of like, okay, we're I don't know, we're done with MO and Tom, where the mission, you know, the moon mission, the it's over. It's you know, Tom. Like it's we're in Boulder. This is a new life. It's a new chance to. It
would be interesting to go because I noticed that too. I definitely think that's the first time it happens where he doesn't spell moon and then doesn't say, you know, well no, because he never says moon, but yeah, he doesn't spell it MOON. It would be interesting to go back and see if he even does that device at all the rest of the book. I mean, he's not in the book a ton after that, but it would be interesting.
He doesn't do that ever. He always spells things MOON.
So I think we should, because that's like towards the very end. We should look through that last 100 pages and see if that's a point where maybe he doesn't do MOON again. Because I think that is him learning totally and like it just plays into this idea of the next chapter starting. I think with the Boulder Free Zone also, you know, like things are changing.
I'm guessing we're about to wrap up on Tom because I think we've covered him pretty well, but I did want to just bring up a piece of writing that I found particularly effective that's in the Tom chapter. And it's when he's biking down the road, but before Flag has found out who the third spy is. Nimbly, his feet found the pedals, and he biked on faster and faster, bending over the handlebars to cut down the wind resistance, picking up speed until he was nearly flying along. If he had come upon a wrecked car in his path, he would have pedaled into it full tilt and perhaps killed himself. But little by little, he could feel that dark, hot presence falling behind him. And the greatest wonder was that the awful red eye had glanced his way, had passed over him without seeing. Maybe because I'm bent over my handlebars so far, Tom Cullen reasoned incoherently, and then it had closed again. The dark man had gone back to sleep. How does the rabbit feel when the shadow of the hawk falls on him like a dark crucifix and then goes on without stopping or even slowing? How does the mouse feel when the cat, who has been crouched patiently outside his hole for the entire day, is picked up by its master and tossed unceremoniously out the front door? How does the deer feel when it steps quietly past the mighty hunter who is snoozing away the effects of his 3 lunchtime beers? Perhaps they feel nothing, or perhaps they feel what Tom Cullen felt as he rode out of that black and dangerous sphere of influence, a great and nearly electrifying sunburst of relief, a feeling of new birth, most of all a feeling of safety, scarcely earned, that such great good luck must surely be a sign from heaven.
Oh, it's great.
I think it's just incredible. And then a couple of chapters later, we have this brief moment where Tom is sleeping and a rattlesnake comes up and curls up and sleeps beside him and then slithers away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know exactly what King is saying. I don't know how I feel about a god or someone being blessed or protected, but it's there's something about it that I found really transfixing.
Well, yeah, and that ties to what we were saying earlier about the religion element working a lot better for me in the third book because it's tying more to nature and instinct and the world as a whole, as opposed to just like God is real, God is good, and all that, you know. So yeah, we love you, Tom.
I wanted to talk about Lloyd during the characters, but I feel like we touched on him so much already.
Yeah,
I just love to read one section from Lloyd that I found really moving. I think that Lloyd really has that, like, a reckoning when, he encounters Glenn in the jail cell, and Glenn is basically laughing at Randall Flagg. And Randall Flagg can't believe that somebody's laughing at him, and he's so deeply affected by it. And that kind of touches on what we were saying earlier about how fallible and how weak he is in some certain ways. Like, he's so driven by pride that this old man laughing at him drives him crazy. And I think that is probably a moment where Lloyd really starts to, he's already shifting, but I think that he, like, that thank God moment that doesn't happen that I think secretly does, I think maybe it's kind of triggered here, but just Glenn's laughing and Lloyd screams, "Shut up, you mouthy old bastard." He fired again and Glenn Bateman's face disappeared. He fired again and the body jumped lifelessly. Lloyd shot him yet again. He was crying. The tears rolled down his angry, sunburned cheeks. He was remembering the rabbit he had forgotten and left to eat its own paws. He was remembering Poke and the people in the White Connie and Gorgeous George. He was remembering the Phoenix jail and the rat and how he hadn't been able to eat the ticking out of his mattress. He was remembering Trask and how Trask's leg had started to look like a Kentucky Fried Chicken dinner after a while. He pulled the trigger again, but the pistol only uttered a sterile click. This is a moment that you see so much humanity, and you see kind of the accumulation of his own personal suffering start to really sort of manifest and come out on this person who is laughing at the only thing that ever gave him meaning in his life.
Yeah. And in a weird way, it leads Lloyd to greater empathy. Like, it's the first time he kind of feels bad for all these things he's done, which goes back to what you were saying about Flagg in an odd sort of way did make him a better person, oddly enough. Yeah.
Well, he gives anybody a real purpose, and they start to discover who they really are.
Trash Can Man, too. I mean, even though the Trash Can Man is a religious maniac more than anything, I mean, he still ends up, like we said before, kind of serving the greater good. I mean, I think I may have said this before. I think he, King always brings up how this was his American take on the Lord of the Rings, which, I mean, I do get that to an extent. Not that you could, like, sync up characters directly. I mean, Flagg is obviously Sauron and Stu is Frodo, whatever. But I do think the Trash Can Man is very similar to Gollum. And just like Gollum ends up destroying the ring inadvertently through this, like, mania, Trash Can Man kind of does the same thing with Vegas. I mean, he's so consumed by this that it ends up being his and all of Vegas's undoing.
Yeah.
What other characters? Anyone else?
I think are we saving maybe the biggest for last?
Who's the biggest?
Stuart
Oh,
Brennan.
Stuart.
Yeah, Stu. But before we move to Stu, yeah, Trash Can Man, that whole thing with him inadvertently maybe kind of serving God in a way in terms of bringing the bomb or the My Life for You, and what does that really mean? You know, is that really to flag or? I don't know. He's just such a strange, complicated character.
Well, yeah, because you never know with. At a certain point, he's become so loopy, and My Life for You. I mean, I don't know. What if he was talking to God the whole time, and he mistook? I don't know. He mistook.
I don't think he is, but I would love. I started thinking that I was like, well, maybe he's like the instrument. And I'm like, well, he's also batshit crazy.
Well, in a
It's
weird
just
way,
a nightmare.
He's trying to compensate because his own insecurities and mania sort of drove him to. Blow up Indian Springs and kill Carl Huff and all those guys. And
who are the guys that would have bombed the free zone?
Yeah, exactly. But it's, and he knew that was wrong, and he knew that Flag was mad at him, and he went out to go get the nuke as a present for Randall Flagg. And I think that when you called him a religious maniac, and I think that's true. I think he represents a zealot, the kind of person who, in trying to please their angry God, their angry, vengeful God, they do things, they go to such extreme lengths that they serve to undo, but I mean, here it serves the greater good, but I think that, it is a sign of religious mania leading to sort of cataclysm.
There's a section, and I didn't talk about this because I didn't want to give anything away. Book 2, Glenn and Stu are talking, and Glenn blatantly kind of lays out the end of the book, talking about like, well, if it was me, I would just try to figure out how to get a warhead and drive it into the other person's camp and blow everything up. Like, I just always thought that was weird that he just blatantly gave the goat away like that early on, and obviously you don't know that's going to happen, but I was like, really? Why are you writing this right now?
He's like, and it's very. I mean, Glenn definitely, I think, is the prophet, I guess, for most of what happens. Which, like I said, when I first met him, I wanted him I was like, Lloyd, like, shut the hell up, you mouthy old bastard! Like, you're just being so condescending. But he is right. I mean, he's right about the techies being in Vegas. He's right about society falling apart. He's right about Trash Can Man getting that warhead.
When they were filming the miniseries, he was like, "Well, I want to be a character that doesn't die." Can I still be Glenn? Like they're like, no, you can't be Glenn. But Glenn gets got, so they had to give him Teddy.
So what do we think about Stu?
I think who said in the very first episode, someone was like, "Oh, Stu's cool, but he's not the most interesting character."
I think that might have been me.
It wasn't me.
I think in this one, it's tough with Stu. I mean, Stu's great in the third book. I mean, because once again we get to see him be in action during a time where he's taken out of the action of what happens in Vegas. I mean, but Stu he's good through and through. He doesn't deal with the personal struggles that Larry does. He doesn't necessarily have the mental complexity that Glenn does. He definitely doesn't have the demons that Harold does. I mean, compared to everyone on the Free Zone Committee, with the exception of maybe Nick Andros, but Nick Andros has such an interesting life that you want to read about him, and he has the deaf mute thing going on. Stu doesn't have a ton that's like inherently interesting about him. I don't think that makes him a bad character, but I don't really start to love Stu chapters necessarily until the third book. Well, that's not true. I like him in the Center for Disease Control chapters are great from a horror standpoint. But as far as wanting to hear more about Stu and what's going on in Stu's head and his personality, book 3 is where it kind of starts to take off for me.
Yeah, I would say, and it's interesting to bring it back to Allison's point about the parallel thing. It's like, okay, now Stu's got a broken leg and he has a gun, or not a gun, but he has like the pills.
Yeah.
Like, what are the choices he's going to make? And to see him do the complete opposite of Harold. Not Harold's probably a little worse off in terms of his injuries,
Yeah.
but to see him, like what he does and how he tries to survive. And, he has the good fortune of Kojak, just like bringing him food and stuff, which is kind of crazy. But hey, it's Kojak. To see all that happen and then to see Tom and then, because, if it wasn't for Stu, like, I don't know if Tom would have made it back through the winter. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like to see them meet and then they, work with each other to get back, and those chapters, like, and to see Stu, or like you said, the Christmas thing where Stu's like, maybe we're just going to wait here for a little longer because we, kind of deserve like just like some rest, you know, like just but then ultimately they want to get back on the road. I don't know. I really dug the last few chapters with Stu, personally.
Well, because you get to see him. You get to see him hobbled, which doesn't happen at all throughout the book. Even when he's in the Center for Disease Control, he's always being crafty. He's the one character who doesn't have to deal with the. Well, I know I've said their names already, but he doesn't have the mental incapacity of Tom. He doesn't have Nick's handicap. He does, even with Larry. Larry gets so disoriented by the Lincoln Tunnel incident and Rita's death.
Well, Larry's just so emotional.
Exactly, and that puts him in this fog. Stu never has that. Like Stu's able to keep his wits about him the entire time, and maybe the reason he's more interesting. I don't want to say Stu. I mean, I never hated Stu before that, but the reason all of a sudden that he becomes really compelling as a character is because he has a big challenge he has to face that is a challenge within him. It's not Elder, whoever coming in to try and kill him. It's a broken leg, being stuck in one place, getting pneumonia, all that stuff.
Because
and I think
he's the last person that you think, when they say one will fall on the way, he's the last one you think
Totally.
it's
I
going
think
to
it'll
be.
be Ralph or something.
That's one of the things that I found most interesting is that I feel like the first 2 chapters, from the very time that we meet Stu, and he's the one to like calmly lean over and flip the switches on the gas tanks and understand what's going on. He's smart enough to figure out what's going on in the Center for Disease Control. He is put into this position of power not because he wants it, but because someone has to do it, and he is suited to it, and he rises to the occasion. It's like classic hero's journey shit. And then he breaks his leg. And it was really surprising because everything in the book suggests that this is like that Stu is our everyman. We're gonna follow him. He'll make a great sacrifice or somehow escape, and this is like the Stu Redmond narrative. And then it's not.
No.
And instead, it temporarily becomes a Jack London novel.
Yeah.
No, it's funny.
And I really love it.
I read The Call of the Wild right after The Stand, and a lot of those survival chapters reminded me of that. And also, he breaks his leg in the lamest way possible, which I love because it's this ravine, it's this gulch or whatever it is that
Even Glenn can climb.
Glenn can get up it. Ralph, who's a lot older, can climb it. The fucking dog can get up it, and Stu, they would say just trips like whoa. Yeah, I love that about it.
I was gonna say, Allison, having not read the book, that was pretty surprising, right? Did you have any? Who did you think was gonna?
I just assumed
get the broken leg.
like either he would die or he wouldn't. But because of all the setup with Mother Abigail saying like Stu will lead, and if Stu falls, Larry will lead, and if Larry falls, Glenn will lead, and whatever. I assumed that maybe something might happen to him, but I figured it would be at a big climactic
or like
moment.
in Vegas or something like that.
Right?
Because if you think about it, he kind of has nothing to do with that final stand.
Yeah,
he
he's
really
very
doesn't.
removed, and so instead, like if we're picking the standing that every character makes, his is just choosing to live, essentially, choosing to survive, and maybe that's like the greatest purpose that Harold serves in his I thought a lot about good deaths versus bad deaths when I was reading book 3, which I think is intentional. And if Harold's death becomes a good death, it's not because of the note he wrote. It's because perhaps seeing that and thinking that's a waste, it's a waste of Susan and it's a waste of Nick and maybe even it's a waste of Harold. Maybe that is part of why that and his promise to Franny is maybe why he chose to survive and to fight to survive, which is a really compelling narrative and not at all the one that I thought was going to happen, which is really satisfying.
His stand is to learn to stand again.
God.
Well, I also think that,
I need a second. Hold on. Oh, Dan. All right, go ahead, man.
his Stu's fall, I also think reiterates and kind of is a turning point for Larry on his journey to be as strong as he is at the end, because just that sequence between the two of them where they're talking, and he's like, no, like, you've got to leave me, you've got to go on, you've got to do this, and he kind of I want to feel like I want to say that strengthens Larry and Ralph and the other guys, especially. Yeah, and we gotta talk about Ralph and Larry really quick at the end of this, but and Franny too.
I love the idea that Mother Abigail in her final moments was like delivering this directive, and with this grandiose language, if Stu falls, then Larry will lead. And if Larry
Yeah.
falls, and really what it meant was like, if Stu trips down an embankment, Larry will lead. And that's so she's in her final moments right before she takes her last bowel movement of twigs and berries. She goes, he falls.
She's like, in her head, she's like, oh man, I wish I could have gotten it out that I meant fall literally, but I don't have time.
When this happens, you guys are gonna think that's hilarious.
I do like moving on to Larry and Ralph, and you guys talked to Adam Stork about that scene because that's actually still a really great scene in the miniseries where Stu is like, no, you have to go, and Larry.
That's probably one of the best scenes of the movie.
I think it's probably his like Adam Stork's best acting moment too.
Yeah.
Where he's just. I mean, because once again, he's not as young as Harold, but I mean, Larry is a lot younger. He's like a good decade younger than Stu, and obviously younger than Ralph and Glenn. I mean, he is this, in a way, still kind of a kid, you know, and I think that's the moment where he probably has to grow up. And I love where he's on death row, essentially, and wakes up and has that, finally, that self-realization of like, you know what, the new Larry Underwood, he's a man that his mom really could have appreciated, and maybe even that oral hygienist from Queens of the Bronx.
I love that he revisits those little moments.
Yeah, I love that because he's haunted. I mean, he's haunted by these women he's let down. And he's been laying down women the entire time, and
these people who are like long dead, and like Wayne Stookie and all these people.
And it kind of it goes back to the judge has a conversation with Larry right before the judge takes off of like stop whining, like have a little self-righteousness, like be like accept the fact that you're in this new life and you're doing good things. And I really think it's like hours before he dies that he's once again fully formed Larry. He's been a good guy for a little while, but he's fully formed and accepting, you know?
Yeah. And what about Ralph?
Ralph? I don't know. We haven't talked about Ralph much. We feel like we make fun.
Honestly, there really isn't a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an interesting character. I like that he represents kind of the salt of the earth, kind of, farmer kind of character, and I find him enjoyable, and I like his friendship with
Nick and Tom.
And Tom, I think and I think he's a fundamentally good man, but I don't really have much of a connection to him as a character.
And Mother Abigail even says that because it's one of her monologue chapters in book 2. She says something like, oh, she really liked that Ralph. He's a guy who maybe didn't think he was. I like when I paraphrase these things. Like, I'm acting like that's the text. Like, oh, he's a guy. No, but he's a guy who maybe isn't giving his intelligence the type of credit it deserves. But in a post-apocalyptic world, we need these people who are just kind of, oh shucks, I guess I'll just do this thing. And Mother Abigail comments on that. How it's almost like winking at the reader, like, oh yeah, he's not someone who's gonna stand out necessarily among the crowd, but you also need those types of people for a functioning society. And I think with Ralph, Ralph arguably maybe changes the least, I think, of any of the characters, probably between
absolutely
he's pretty steadfast.
Yeah, like between when they meet him in that pickup truck and when he's in that disembowelment cage at the end. But I think you kind of need that too, because his faith is unwavering from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't need to get to that point. He's already there, and I think maybe that's part of why you have two people on the opposite extremes. You have someone who's, and when I say faith, I don't mean religious faith, but faith in themselves, faith in humanity, faith in God. You have someone like Larry whose faith is lapsed or maybe wasn't there in the first place, and someone like Ralph where it was always there. And I think there's something to be said about those being the two guys who, it's not the intellectual guy like Glenn, and it's not the quiet, smart guy like Stu. It's the kind of blind faith, and then the guy who had to earn his faith a little bit. Yeah. Do you guys have any more Ralph? He's a good guy. We love Ralph. Hey, if you know what? If the world ended tomorrow and I was one of the survivors, I'd want to Ralph.
I'd love to crack a beer with Ralph.
I'd want to get picked up by Ralph in the pickup truck. I would trust him. Yeah, Yeah.
Maybe he'll let you wear his hat.
Yeah, can you Ralph? Can I have your hat with a long purple feather or whatever? It's in there.
Oh yeah, I forgot about his feather hat.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good covering of characters.
I think maybe my stand 10-season series episode of choice would be just like Ralph the story. like Ralph drinks a beer, blanks his thoughts, reminisces about the old days.
Thinks about doing some work, but then decides to drink another beer.
It's like, I could help out, but man, my dogs are barking.
There's one thing that does bug me about not Ralph as a character, but just King. It's a little bit, I think, a piece of writing he let slip through the cracks. So Ralph in I know we're not in Pound Cake yet, but Ralph has a couple of ladies that he's interested in the book. I think Olivia is her name, the one that the porch store one. It's at Hemingford Home, and Mother Abigail's like Ralph's trying to like, keeps getting stuff for this woman, like impressing her. Like, that's fine. She has a fine portrait over that, that thing.
Yeah.
But that's Ralph trying to impress this woman. But then they don't mention her again. And then when he's in the Boulder Free Zone, they mention like, oh, Ralph lived with his woman, and Nick lives there too. Like Ralph lives with his woman or something on this place. But they never mention her. It's like one line. And I'm like, wait, is Ralph with someone or not? He doesn't have anyone to see him off at the... So, I don't know. Maybe he's like
Ralph's up to some of the stuff that Harold and Nadine were up to.
maybe Ralph's a dirty dog and just like is like...
Oh, God.
Like I love that that's like the hidden thing. Like, oh yeah, the old farmer womanizer or something. But no, it's a piece of writing that bothers me. They cover everyone else who's coupling up, and they mention it with Ralph that he actually lives with someone. And we know he lives with Nick, but then they don't mention her again.
Maybe it's like in Civil War when the Avengers need to recover, and so they go to Hawkeye's safe house.
Yeah,
it turns out he has a secret wife, secret kids.
Well, the thought of Ralph Brentner having sex is a little scary, and you know where scary things lie? They lie in a little place called the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
Something that was kind of creepy and stuck with me was just when, I just feel bad for the judge. But no, when the judge is held up at the hotel, the motel for like a night, and the Raven shows up.
Yeah.
And it's just, but mainly because King starts alluding to, Edgar Allan Poe's Raven story. And it's unsettling because we've seen the Flag as the Raven before, but this time the judge knows. Mm-hmm. Like he even says that like, he's like, maybe this is him, and he's found me. He's seeing that I'm on the way.
Yeah. I mean, that whole sequence is the whole sequence with the judge and then Bobby Terry and the other guy like chasing him, and that's the little tense scene that happens, when they first start talking, and then just the way it all plays out, it's all very like chaotic and very messy, and then and it's also just really creepy to me that Flag wanted to cut off his head and send it in a box to them.
Yeah, it's very much the beginning of the end there. That I think that's why that scene, when he does meet those guys on the road, is so scary, because like Dan was saying, this whole rest of the book, your heart's racing, everything's amped up, and that that thing just goes totally wrong. I mean, he dies, and then Flag shows up with the feathers in his hair, and which I think is actually really effective in the miniseries and in the book. Yeah. But I know some other people disagree, but Randall.
Well, it is it is a little. I think the feathers are a little silly, but I still love the description of Bobby Terry learned that there's worse things than death, or that's such a fucking scary ending to that chapter, and it sets such a good tone for the third book, because it's such a brutal, sort of unforgiving section of that book.
Something that's a little scary to me with the way he depicts the crow or raven. Is it raven or crow? I don't remember. Either way, the bird. To distinguish it from regular birds, the eyes are always rimmed with red, which I think is always really creepy. I don't think book 3 is as heavy on cemetery elements as book 1 for sure. Book 1 is still the most terrifying for me in terms of physical detail and just the actual horrific things happening. I don't think we have a Lincoln Tunnel sequence or a Stu escaping from the CDC or even a Franny burying her dad sequence in this, but there are these little moments, like you guys said, with Bobby Terry's death and the judge. One that's just like kind of a creepy nod to me is where they stumble across the body of the kid. Yeah. And they find he managed to take out that one last wolf that was on his throat, but also got killed. And I think what's, I guess, a little chilling for me is that, obviously we know the kid was horrible, and I didn't necessarily feel bad for the kid when he died. But they don't know who he is, and they're just like, oh, this poor guy, that had to have been torture. I wonder what state of mind he had to have been in to, outlast these wolves and all that. And also too, because that is in the original book, them finding the kid, although the kid is not in there. And also it does we talked before about the kid maybe being vaguely supernatural,
Yeah.
like he was, and also they had the line when Trash Can Man encounters him about him never stopping to think that Flag sent the kid so Trash Can Man could be even more tied to Flag.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the kid it doesn't possibly have some supernatural elements to him, especially with him being a kind of tribute to Charles Starkweather. However, there's something creepy about them finding his body because it does show that he was real. He was this actual thing that got killed, and just calling him the Wolfman and all that was creepy for me. But
yeah.
What
I
about
mean,
you,
just the whole. I'm just gonna riff on. I mean, just the stuff with the kid. Yeah, it's like that section. Even though I know it's not one of our favorites, I still think a lot about it because when my wife read it, she sort of had this reaction that. When the super flu happened, there's a line in there about how all these multiple types of evil kind of came about. Like that evil was birthed in many forms with this sort of post-apocalyptic act, and she very much read the kid as being sort of a supernatural figure, which I found really fascinating. And I mean, not in the sense that he's not real, but like a genuine, they mentioned Charles Starkweather, and like it genuinely makes me feel like it is like genuinely a reincarnation of that. That's like how eerie I find that character. And then just the fact that he seemed to last as long and take out some of those wolves. It's like that section's very eerie for me because it feels like almost another Randall Flagg type figure and they've stumbled upon his corpse. And there's something just very, very unsettling to me.
What if they were like, oh, let's search his wallet, and they're like, Charles Starkweather. Oh my god, yeah.
But it's just neat. No, I'd say the scariest stuff probably in the whole book for me is the stuff that goes on with Nadine, and I know in the last episode you guys talked about the Ouija and everything. Like that stuff was really spooky to me. But there's a section where she talks about her own virginity and how her own virginity is sort of turning into something. It's like it's betraying her in a weird way, and it's like it's roiling about inside of her, and the way it's described is probably one of the most sickening sections of the whole book for me. And I'm gonna read it for you right now. But revulsion was only a scaly crust over something worse, a caked and long-hidden lust, an ageless pimple finally brought to a head and about to spew forth some noisome fluid, some sweetness long since curdled. His hands, slipping over her back, were much hotter than her sunburn. She moved against him, and suddenly the slim saddle between her legs seemed plumper, fuller, more tender, more aware. The seam of her slacks was chafing her in a delicately obscene way that made her want to rub herself, get rid of the itch, cure it once and for all. It's both gross, but also like it's passion, but it's also like putrid. And that description is so complex and gross and weird, and in a lot of ways I think very true for people who deal with a certain amount of sexual repression. Well, when you have no outlet for it, it can become a very violent sort of thing.
And I'm sure we'll talk about it in just a bit, that scene in the desert. But it's weird with Nadine and Flagg, and they go into this in book 2, but really in book 3, how even when she sees how horrible he is, mm-hmm. and what their, I guess, consummation is, there's still a part of her that's kind of turned on by it, mm-hmm. even when it's happening and she's going insane. And like they talk about her like orgasming and stuff over and over, and it's just so. Ugh, I don't know. I mean, we'll get Allison.
We'll get there.
I don't want to. I mean, I would say I don't want to spoil anything, but I know we're going to talk about it in just a bit. So, we want to go into that?
We will, but I want to actually highlight another Nadine section while we're still in the cemetery that I found particularly frightening and also really beautifully written, which is her death. She's been goading him first about the 4 men that are coming, and then about his own people deserting, and the fact that they're doubting him, and it's scary and weird and great. It snapped. Whatever there was inside him, it snapped. "You lie," he screamed at her. His hand slammed down on her shoulders, snapping both collarbones like pencils. He lifted her body over his head into the faded blue desert sky, and as he pivoted on his heels, he threw her up and out as he had thrown the glass. He saw the great smile of relief and triumph on her face, the sudden sanity in her eyes, and understood. She had baited him into doing it, understanding somehow that only he could set her free, and she was carrying his child. He leaned over the low parapet, almost overbalancing, trying to call back the irrevocable. Her nightgown fluttered. His hand closed on the gauzy material, and he felt it rip, leaving him only a scrap of cloth so diaphanous that he could see his fingers through it, the stuff of dreams unwaking. Then she was gone, plummeting straight down with her toes pointed toward the earth, her gown billowing up her neck and over her face in drifts. She didn't scream. She went down as silently as a defective skyrocket.
Oh.
And then that's followed by another instance of Flag somehow not being able to work his magic. It's maybe the second indication that when people defy him, he loses his power.
Yeah.
Anyway, the fact that Nadine gets such a fucked up happy ending, but a happy ending, I find really satisfying.
Well, I remember there's a moment before she dies when she's in his suite, and I believe Lloyd meets her, and he like forces her to shake Lloyd's hand, and then she immediately touches her crotch and starts like masturbating, but like really absently.
Yeah.
It's like that's so unsettling.
Yeah.
Like that shit's so gross.
But let's get into the old Nadine Randall Flagg sex scene, shall we?
This is intense
Do we want to
shit.
read it?
I want to call out a couple phrases.
Yeah.
And I guess this is sort of like equal parts cemetery and pound cake.
Yeah, this is gonna be a transitional.
Yeah. So just pretend that we've got 1 foot in the cemetery and 1 foot in a big slice of pound cake.
It's death cake.
Because this is maybe the most frightening thing in the book.
I think so.
But it's also obscene and a little bit over the top in the way that a lot of our pound cake sections are. To Dan's earlier point, I do want to say that I think it's such a silly thing to have to clarify, but anytime a woman indicates in any way or is unable to indicate in any way that she doesn't want to have sex with you, that makes it a rape. So the fact that Nadine went willingly to Flagg does not make this scene not a rape scene, which I think is important to note. Nor does the fact that she orgasms during the sex make it not a rape scene, because there's this huge stigma around rape survivors where they feel this incredible shame and guilt if they take any physical pleasure from a rape, like somehow they enjoyed it, it's a physiological response. It has absolutely nothing to do with being violated, and it's complicated. Anyway, so that is particularly upsetting. But let's look at a couple little moments here. She saw what he had for her and began to scream. And I want to tip my hat to King here for not actually describing Randall Flagg's junk. Thanks, man. The dark man's grin sprang forth at the sound, huge and glittering and obscene in the night, and the moon stared down blankly at them both, bloated and cheesy. And what I love about that is that it's the moon that's bloated and cheesy. And yet, let's see, what else have we got here?
What's the thing about Destroyer?
This. And when the dead coldness of him slipped into her, the shriek ripped up and out of her, bolted free, and she struggled, and the struggle was useless. He battered into her, invader, destroyer, and the cold blood gushed down her thighs, and then he was in her, all the way up to her womb, and the moon was in her eyes, cold and silver fire, and when he came, it was like molten iron, molten pig iron, molten brass, and she came herself, came in screaming incredible pleasure, came in terror, in horror, passing through the pig iron and brass gates, into the desert land of insanity, chased through, blown like a leaf by the bellowing of his laughter, watching his face melt away, and now it was the shaggy face of a demon lolling just above her face, a demon with glaring yellow lamps for eyes, windows into a hell she never even considered, and still there was that awful good humor in them, eyes that had watched down the crooked alleys of 1,000 tenebrous night towns. Those eyes were glaring and glinting and finally stupid. And I just want to point out that sentence, because that was a sentence, began with, and when the dead coldness of him slipped into her. So that is one sentence, mostly commas, one semicolon. One
The
sentence.
phrase "molten pig iron" is
I
so
know.
gross.
It's so well, especially with all the other references to pigs in relation to Randall Flagg.
I looked it
It's-
up, and pig iron is a real thing.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
know that, but it's. I was like, what was the pigs and what's with the piggies?
Pig iron in the world of theater. The fly systems are usually on pig weights. And pig
Yeah,
iron.
it's just like molten pig iron
Well-
is like such a disgusting phrase.
I think too. Part of why that whole scene is disturbing for a lot of reasons, but you obviously see Flagg's true persona come out. I mean, we know he's evil the whole time, but I think that's probably the time where you see the most this is the word, demonological elements. Like you see the more animalistic part of him being an actual demon takeover.
It's like he stops wearing his Edgar suit.
Yeah.
Anybody? No one.
Edgar.
Oh, yeah,
Edgar
yeah.
suit.
Men in
Yeah.
Black.
Men in Black.
It's like he's wearing. It's another Doctor Who reference. It's like he's wearing like a skin suit made out of another human being.
And it's weird too because it's an instance of King being very vivid and descriptive, but also not being descriptive. I mean, like you said, he doesn't when I was younger, when he said, "Oh, she saw what he had for her," I just picture that his penis is like a creature or something. Like, no, seriously, like a
alien.
No, like a xenomorph or
it's
worm
the
or something.
mark of
yeah.
a great piece of writing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure that we should necessarily say what we all imagined when King writes she saw what he had for her, but I guarantee everybody who reads that book immediately then pictures what Randall Flagg's penis looks like.
Exactly, and
Through
it's,
whatever. There were like
and
forks in
and
mine,
if you compare this to maybe the sex scenes between Harold and Nadine, well, not set, you know what I mean, or Stu and Franny or any of them in the book, where they, the other scenes they talk about like, oh, he touched her breast this way, or she looked, he goes into very straightforward descriptions, and here he's being graphic, but he's not being clear, and I think that's so scary. Like he talks about it in it's the classic thing of writing a sex scene like a death scene, right? And he's talking about him being like a destroyer of worlds and like batterer and all this stuff, and it is just so brutal.
I think part of why that sentence, that incredible run-on sentence, is so unsettling and effective is because she's descending into madness.
Yep.
And the fact that he lets the language do that too. The other little chunk I wanted to call out is the very end of this sequence. Shaggy Demon's head, a lolling tongue, deeply split into two forks. Its dead breath fell on her face. She was in the land of insanity now. The iron gates were closed. And then it says, and it's in italics, the moon. And then there's an M dash and an exclamation point.
Oh,
so like a thought interrupted and then silence.
And the morning after scene they have, it's weird because Flagg doesn't remember a lot of it either, and it just goes back to he has that line, "Oh, good sex always made him hungry," and he's almost kind of confused as to why Nadine is acting the way she is, which is really disturbing.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to the thing you said about rape, also just like this, because Flagg probably doesn't even look at it like that because he's awful, but this scene afterwards of her just being in instant catatonia in the middle of the desert, it is just so. I mean, I don't have a ton to add to any of that. I mean, it's just
I wonder
so.
if King had a bunch of crumpled pieces of paper with descriptions of Randall Flagg's penis on it before.
And he was finally like, you know what?
I'm just gonna.
But
Let's not
that's
say
the
we're
best.
good.
The best thing in horror are the things we never see and the things that are left to our own imagination. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad he didn't, because King was like itching to write the description of that thing.
Well, because there are other times where he doesn't show restraint, and I wouldn't call this sentence restraint necessarily, but it's not. It's
not
like
exploitative
it's not like it's not explicit in the way that a lot of the other stuff in the book is. He's not describing this the same way that he's describing how Charles Campion looks as a plague victim, or even how Glenn Bateman's face looks when it gets blown off, even though it's a violent act.
Yeah, I think it's a mark of a great writer when you realize that you've created something so upsetting that there's absolutely nothing that you can say to improve on it.
Yeah.
Right? And if he had put any description there, it would have brought the whole thing down. Like, nothing he could write could be worse than what each individual person would imagine. Because it then is cooked out of our own fears and insecurities and the things that disgust us and horrify us. And I don't ever want to read it again as long as I live, but it's really well written.
Yeah,
Well,
that's great.
You know, a lot like Randall Flagg, good sex makes me hungry.
Oh!
So it's time for pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone in bad, Mama. Everything in the sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
There's no shortage of pound cake when we're discussing Julie Lowry. They love to make a comparison between her pimpled idiot face, which is like I'm not saying that, that's a something from there, and her body. Here's an example. There was something obscene about the contrast between the tight allure of her young body and the childish, pouty, and rather vacuous expression on her face.
I have, once again, Cemetery not as Pound Cake not as pounding as the
not as plentiful
as book 2 for certain. But there is some good stuff in here. And this isn't a great scene because this isn't the Dana Lloyd scene that precedes her death. And I'm more just laughing at Lloyd's dialogue here. So okay, this is like post-coital, but it's in a way pre-coital again. All right, so this is Lloyd to Dana. You shouldn't walk around like that with no clothes on, sweet buns. You'll get me horny all over again. And I always laugh at when people use the word horny like seriously, because I maybe not to get too explicit, but in my sexual experience, I've never said like I'm so goddamn horny, baby, right now. I don't know. It's just always funny to me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know, man. But different strokes for different folks. So then it says. He looked at his watch. Well, we got maybe 40 minutes. His penis was already beginning to make twitching movements, like a divining rod, Dana thought with sour amusement. And now that pound cake scene is kind of funny because like it's Dana making fun of him,
Right.
Whenever someone goes into someone's inner monologue about someone else's physical features or sexuality, it always cracks me up because like it's like the thing with Larry and the oral hygienist, the God, I am going crazy, like him just taking it that extra spot, or that extra step. So her saying, like a divining rod. I don't know. It's pretty funny to me. What about you guys? What pound cake do you have served up?
I have one sentence. It's a Julie Lowry sentence,
Yeah.
and this one I actually think is really funny. And it is: she stomped off, fanny swinging in tight little circles of indignation.
That's actually funny.
Yeah.
I think I did this very late at night while I was like half asleep. I was probably reading. I didn't cite it, so I don't know where it is. I just wrote down a phrase. As pink as a chorus girl's nipple.
Oh, I know exactly where that's
Where
from.
is that?
That's in the very end where Flagg wakes up on the beach, and that's how he describes the sand. Let's see. Wait, hold on one second, because I actually that was another phrase I remember when I was younger. Okay, so he goes. This is when he wakes up on the beach. He got to his feet and almost fell. He was shaky, bad off, felt hungover. He turned around. Green jungle seemed to leap out at his eyes, a dark forested tangle of vines and broad leaves and lush blooming flowers that were, in parentheses, as pink as a chorus girl's nipple. He was bewildered again. What was a chorus girl? For that matter, what was a nipple?
And then I've got some more Ratman lines. Nothing big, but it's just stuff that you can tell that they pulled it over for the movie too. So when they come to get Larry and Ralph to go put him in the disembowelment cages, the footsteps reach his cell, and you see, "Get up, Wonder Bread!" A gleeful voice called in. "The Ratman has come for your pale gray ass."
Pale gray. Well, it is funny because this book does have the most disturbing sex scene in it, as we just heard, the Nadine Flagg one. But outside of that, we see Dana and Lloyd have sex, but I don't know if we see any other actual sexual activity in book 3, do we?
Oh, book 3?
But
I was
in
going to say,
book 3
Franny and Stu are getting it on every chapter.
Yeah.
No, book 3, I don't think so.
Yeah, but I mean, pound cake isn't always reserved for pure sex. I mean, we have some. What was it? boobs, bowels, and what balls? What were the 3 B's last time?
I think it was boobs, balls, and bowel movements.
You know, and so we do save this section for some other funny writings. Do you want to go over the names of real quick of our three favorite Vegas
what
residents?
do you got, Mac?
Yeah, or do you have any pound cake, Mac?
Well, I'm sorry to report that I was sent straight to bed without any dessert. I did not have any pound cake. I mean, there really isn't a whole ton.
I wonder if Mike is listening to this because he's our pound cake expert. He's just like, no, you idiots, you missed he has like a whole scroll of parchment.
He'll
At
work
one
it
point,
into.
though, Ratman does go, Ratman don't want to hear no more of that honky bullshit voodoo.
Yeah, that's
no
it.
But he says, I think he says honky voodoo because they couldn't say bullshit on TV. No, okay. This is one thing that drove me crazy when I was reading this, and it's very much in book 3. There are 3 different characters throughout The Stand. Here are their names: Whitney Horgan, Heck Drogan, and Barry Dorgan.
And they're all 3 like buddies. They're not
They're
just
all
like
Vegas guys.
I quit. I'm going on strike.
like honestly, if you had one of them in the beginning of the book, one of them in the free zone, and one of them in Vegas, you probably wouldn't notice. But I think most of their scenes are together.
It's so bizarre.
Whitney Horgan helps crucify Heck Drogan,
and then Barry Dorgan is like the head of the police, so he's all there in the end during the finale when Whitney Horgan stands up and tries to put a stop to it.
And it's weird too because it would be different if their names were like Richardson and Richards or even Williams, but it's I don't know any one of those last names in real life.
Well, I read that when Stephen King was coming up with, because there's so many characters in this, that when he was coming up with the names, he had some Scrabble pieces, and I can just see Joe crawling up and just, moving the pieces when he's not looking, and then, so one character turned into 3, and,
so Joe, bizarre. You little son of a bitch.
So bizarre. I cannot make heads or tails of why you would name so many characters like that.
No, it would have been funny.
Dorgan's a pretty cool name, though.
Say the correct.
I prefer Horgan.
Say they're going to press for the uncut edition, and they realize their mistake, but they don't have time to go through and it's before the days of control find, so they can't find everything. So they're like, all right, Steven, just can you write something explaining this? And then Lloyd has all them in his office. He's like, all right, boys, get to work. We have a crucifixion. Hey, say, by the way, have you 3 boys ever noticed that you have almost the same last name? And they're like, yeah, it's weird, isn't it, Lloyd? It just
guys, I think we uncovered another episode of the series.
Yes, I want the adventures of those 3.
They're in the desert. They're all man, it's really funny how we're blood brothers, but we could have been real brothers because we.
What you don't know is that Randall's middle name is Jorgen, Dan's middle name is Smorgan, Mac's middle name is Schnorgan, and my middle name is Mackenzie.
That's Schnorgan with the umlaut over the.
Schnorgan.
Dana's last name is Jurgens.
Yeah. Oh man.
There's a lot of hard G's over here. Any more pound cake, or are we full up?
No, it's a little light meal. I mean, we didn't want to get we were pre-diabetic last week. We didn't want to get full diabetes, so we had to cut down on it a little bit. But what's our next book? Long Walk. I don't know if that.
No, there's some in there.
Oh, there's a ton in there.
I don't think there's a ton. It's a bunch of.
Just wishful thinking.
I suspect we'll find some.
I know at least one that I can think of. Right
and then in the Dead Zone, which I haven't reread yet, but I don't think there's a ton of pound cake in the Dead Zone. I'm trying to think of the next book we get to that might have. So we get the Dead Zone. Firestarter. Cujo's got some pound cake. I remember a scene with someone walking through a house and doing something very pound cake.
This is probably a good time to tip our hats to someone who got quite a lot of pound cake in the previous episode, because we are recording this on Mother's Day. So cheers to you, Mother Abigail.
Yes.
To all the mothers in the world, especially Mother Abigail. And
a very happy Mother's Day.
She's a woman with a fine porch door and lots of sex juices and
twigs and berries.
Twigs and berries. And up until she died. So
I think that's a good transition, I'd say, into a place we like to call King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
Aside from the obvious King's Dominion, which is that the Stand exists in the Dark Tower universe, are there any other nods to King?
I have 2, and they're very small, but in the Anchor Books edition, page 1165, it's another judge sequence. What?
We gotta get Anchor Books as our sponsor. We give them free advertising every episode. Like, seriously, like they gotta send us some free books or something. Anyway,
man.
continue, Mac.
No, but the judge, it's the crow sequence. He says, the crow looking in at him, seeming to grin, and it came to him with a dreamy, testicle-shriveling certainty that this was the Dark Man, his soul, his Ka somehow. And there's the mention of Ka in this book, which is also, it's a big Dark Tower thing, which I thought was really interesting.
And also a play on words, because it could also be his Ka.
Hey, and also
nailed it.
Also, King's Dominion with the testicle shriveling, because I think that deserves its heads in like every King book.
Yeah. And then on top of that, the only other thing that I noticed, at least in book 3, was when Stu and Franny are talking about moving, they mentioned that one of the places they would maybe move to is Castle Rock.
Oh, that's right. That's a good one. Yeah. No, I'm trying to think if there's anything. I mean, yeah, beyond the big thing of Randall Flagg being this kind of connective tissue for Dark Tower and The Stand and a lot of Stephen King books. I'm trying to think if I mean, the only one I brought up was in the comic adaptation, the old Richard Bachman Stephen King cameo. But yeah,
I didn't have any other besides those.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a reach, but on page 978, Harold, I think it's the Anchor Books. It says Harold would stand on the lip of the drop and chant 1, 2, 3, just like the others. But the talisman never worked. The talisman?
That is a big old reach.
Well, hey,
that's a room 237 for you.
What is in room 237?
Mac, I'm Mr. Ratman Beam himself, or Mr. Rat Beam over there. Did you mention that the Ratman? He's on the beam of the rat.
I will say I really didn't find any rat references in book 3, which I thought was really interesting because there's so many in book 1 and 2. But
rat
Lloyd,
references?
Yeah,
Are you forgetting about the Rat Man?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, also
the Rat Man. The Rat Man himself is.
But
is
Lloyd
prevalent.
reminisces about eating the rat.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that earlier. I was saving it for the old King's Dominion. That when Randall mentioned about Lloyd, he references remembering the rat.
Yeah.
So we're definitely on the path of the rat. I was right the whole time.
I think we talked about this when we did the Stephen King Cinematic Universe, with the big feature that we linked to a couple episodes ago, where we cast everything and made the equivalent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but with Stephen King books. I think one of my ideas was like, what we should do is Gasher, who's a pirate character in The Wastelands. I was like, cast him as the same actor as the Rat Man, and it's like, cause a wheel. So we're on the beam of the Rat Man. I think.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Any other King's Dominion? Allison, you got anything? Anyone else? Yeah.
No, I think it's the Stand is the Stand.
I know, man. I feel it's funny. It feels like it feels weird being at the end of the road because we're already at our final thoughts. Although we've been in Stand Land for over a month now.
It feels like a tiny age.
Well, we're gonna be in Stanland again next ep with the old miniseries.
Oh, that's true. I am excited. I'm really excited to talk about the miniseries because as Mike already said, we have an interview with Mick Garris. That's great. He has a ton of cool stuff to say. Wait, that reminds me. I did think of something that was a little bit King's Dominion-y. The way that that King describes how Randall Flagg looks right before the explosion is very similar to how he describes the boogeyman. He describes it as a scarecrow-like, hunched-over figure.
Yeah.
I think Larry sees Flagg almost in his true form for a second, and he talks about the eyes and the hunched-over scarecrow thing. Right? Let me find that real quick.
Glenn also references him as the boogeyman also in book 2, I believe.
Yeah.
That's
Here, let me
I didn't make that connection.
give me a hot sec. Let me find because let's see what chapter. I got Winnie Horgan, so I'm getting close. Okay, so and there's Wolfman. Man, it's funny. When I was younger, I used to think that it was like a lot. There was a lot more book after the explosion happens, but there's really not. Okay, here we go. He had a bare impression of something monstrous standing in front of where Flagg had been. Something slumped and hunched and almost without shape. Something with enormous yellow eyes slit by dark cat's pupil. Then it was gone. Larry saw Flagg's clothes, the jacket, the jeans, the boots, standing upright with nothing in them. For a split second, they held the shape of a body that had been inside them, then they collapsed. Okay, sorry. He hasn't mentioned Scarecrow, but that just reminded me a lot of the Boogeyman a little bit. You know? So, I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but...
we like stretches here at the Losers Club.
Yeah, well, but so are we at overall thoughts then?
I think it's about time to talk about our overall thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago.
Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Why don't we start with Justin, because Justin actually sent us some thoughts via text.
Yeah, Justin Gerber. Well, not that they couldn't be here today. We only have 4 mics in the studio, and we think it's better to have 4.
We're trying to preserve the integrity and the quality of the audio.
Not
for
too
you,
much.
our listeners.
Well, I think also 4 is about our sweet spot in terms of not getting on too many random tangents.
Yeah.
Though I was very excited about our NBA tangent, and cheers to the Blazers fan out there listening.
There's always room for NBA tangents.
Yeah, next time Justin's on, because the idea, listeners, is that we're as you've noticed, we'll have various combinations of 4 as we go on. It's 4 mics, and it prevents crosstalk and overlap and all that stuff. Okay, so here's what Justin had to say about the stand. I don't know if he gave me a rating or not.
Oh, he gave a rating.
He did give one. Okay,
he texted it to him.
Oh, he did. Okay, so we're just gonna do the thoughts first, right?
Yeah,
okay, cool. All right. Here's my review summary. In the preface, King calls The Stand a long tale of dark Christianity, so I read it this time around with that in mind. It made the God's Hand finale and more religious aspects more palatable when viewed in that way. I love books 1 and 3, but book 2 remains a sore spot filled with ad hoc meetings. Still love the novel, but there are greater works around the corner. Ouija Origin of Evil is a bad movie.
God damn it! He's always coming at me with that.
That
Good movie.
I'll go next if it's cool, just because that lines up with my thoughts on the book.
Well, Justin also shared some thoughts with me, so I just want to share those.
Wait a second.
Quote, MVP, unquote, James Harden has 10 points with 6 minutes left in an elimination game at home against a team sans their best player. Hashtag HOUVSAS. That's not true. He just tweeted that, but I just felt like we need to get some NBA.
I was going to say, like,
Little
does he have
NBA
any
moment.
other Ouija Origin of Evil thoughts?
Just that sucks and he hates you.
James Harden sucks, and so does Ouija Origin.
Damn it.
I read the preface this time around, and none of this had stood out to me as much as before when I read it. But yeah, he does call it a dark tale of Christianity. So even some of my criticisms about in book 2 especially of good and evil presented in this God and devil context, which I said before, I hate the line Mother Abigail has to Nick, like, "Oh, God believes in you," because I think it's like a mean thing to say to someone. But like I said, book 3 does clear a lot of that up for me. And also, one of my favorite books is the Lord of the Rings series, and King has repeatedly said that this is his version of Lord of the Rings. Now, something that I have to remember when reading The Stand is that Lord of the Rings, good and evil, is very differentiated, and he doesn't really do anything specific to differentiate it. J.R.R. Tolkien, for him, it's Sauron and the orcs and whatever else are bad. Gandalf and there's bad guys and good guys. So if I like that book and I can appreciate that book without a ton of nuance in terms of the opposing forces, I can do the same thing with The Stand. That being said, I do agree with him about book 2. Book 2 is a slog. I still think there could be a greater balance between what goes on in Vegas and what goes on in the Boulder Free Zone, to balance out some of that ambiguity. Like, I do think the book has more nuance and ambiguity than I originally thought in book 2. I think it earns it, but I wish it got to it just a little bit sooner. What about you?
Well, how many bright red Pennywise clown noses would you give it?
I would give it, I was going, in book 2, I was thinking toward 3.5 or even 3, but because of book 3 and the complex ending about systems failing, which I really love, that bumped it back up to 4 for me. When I was like 13, I probably would have said 5, but I'm gonna go with 4. It's a 4-noser. 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses.
Mac, what do you got?
No, I agree with you, Dan and Justin. I think that, again, I actually enjoyed book 2, but it is just a bit of a slog. Books 1 and 3 I loved, and I'd probably give it 4 Pennywise red clown noses for sure.
You have to say bright red Pennywise.
Bright red Pennywise clown noses. And I know Mike and Justin, I believe, also gave it 4.
Yeah. Mike said it was a 4-noser. And I think he told Justin told you a 4-noser.
Allison.
So as one of 2 people experiencing the novel for the first time, but the only person experiencing the story for the first time, this was a bit of a roller coaster for me. There were some ups and downs. I did some eye rolling, some Anderson Cooper eye rolls. I definitely give it 2 Anderson Cooper eye rolls for Julie Lowry alone. And there are, as with a lot of things that King writes, there are sections where I think, Jesus Christ, how did no one tell you didn't need all this? But I think it's just an incredible attempt to trace the downfall of society through a means that feels totally feasible. Like, of course, we would bring about our own downfall, and of course, we'd be our own worst enemy in trying to return from that. And the characters are so vividly painted that, like, that's what's going to sit with me.
It's
you know,
still
that's
his best
Glenn
cast, yeah.
is going to sit with me, and Tom is going to sit with me, and Nick is going to sit with me, and Dana is going to sit with me. And that is
Julie
a hell
Lowry,
of,
too.
especially Julie Lowry, always and
Julie will
forever.
do more than just sit with you.
Oh, I know. She's one of those girls that she just even after all this, you think, yeah, she'd probably go for it.
Unless you're the Rat Man, I guess.
I'm planning my Julie Lowry. Well, no, even the Rat Man in the right circumstances.
I'm probably like the Rat
I'm
Man
planning my
now.
Julie Lowry tattoo as we speak. No, I would also give it 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses. And I wish that it was a 5-noser. I think at its very best in some of the sequences, like the in book 1, the montage where we're going through the journalists and the protests. A lot of those individual vignettes are incredible. There's some great the walk through the bunker with the guy's face in the soup. Yeah, all of that lives with me in a way that I'm having a hard time shaking. The final meeting before the explosion and the meeting after the explosion, and then that Dana sequence and both of the big Nadine sequences in book 3, they're just all that Tom stuff. I don't think I'll forget it, you know, and I read a lot, and books tend to fly in and out if they're not really wonderful, and I think this one will sit with me. So I wish it was a 5-noser,
So
but Julie Lowry, so it's a 4-noser.
There's some 5-nose writing in there.
There is some 5-nose writing.
Like Dan, this would have been a 5-noser when I was a kid. This is the book that really made me... It was my first Stephen King book. It made me fall in love with Stephen King. It kind of made me fall in love with horror fiction in general, and helped foster my love of horror, which is a big part of how I make my living now. So it's you know, it's a book that means a lot to me. And you know, I'd say that the read perhaps wasn't as satisfying this time around as it has been in the past. This is probably my 4th time reading it all the way through. It still, to this day, has my favorite ensemble in Stephen King.
Absolutely.
The characters are the kind that I bring up in casual conversation. And you know, and it's like, like you mentioned, Allison. Like, there's so many like dynamite scenes and dynamite arcs and archetypes that are explored. I mean, like, characters like Harold and Nadine represent to me such a breadth of storytelling, like development and arc, and like it's like I think it's a very epic book, and I love the finale. I've always loved the finale with the disembowelment cages and sort of the hand of God. Like, even if it is a little cheesy, maybe the hand of God, the epic proportion of it. It's very rare that a book can achieve something that feels that massive. And I think for me, I've always kind of looked in awe at The Stand. I still do though, and I think that even though it wasn't, like, I'd say book 2 was actually, it took me a very long time to read it this time around, and it was a bit of a slog, and I know we've all been saying that, but that was, you know, for some odd reason, kind of a surprise to me this time around. But but I'd say that, you know, and then also certain portions of it, you know, just as you get older and you get more experience, you realize certain things that, you know, I really wish I could look past the fact that the book is pretty much comprised entirely of, you know, white people, and that there is the idea of like a diverse America is very you know, unexplored here. It's, you know, and it almost is as simple as good and evil sometimes. It transcends that, obviously, but, you know, there's just certain things that I find I had a little bit more trouble getting past, but, you know, overall, though, it's still a book that means a lot to me, and it meant the world to me that my wife, it was literally a vow at my wedding that my wife would finish reading The Stand, and I'm so glad she did, and she loved it too, but, you know, it's like, that's how important this book is to me. So
what would Jen give it? How many noses?
Jen would probably give it 4.
Yeah, 4. So is this
Consensus?
the first consensus?
I was
4
gonna say,
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. Were we at consensus on Rage?
Oh, I think we were. Although
I think no,
I think
we
there
were all
variations.
we were all like 2 or below because I think Mike gave that like a half nose or something.
Yeah.
And I gave it like a nose and a half.
Mike was harsh nose wise.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with like it definitely being the strongest cast of characters.
Yeah.
I can't even rereading Salem's Lot, which I actually like a lot better as a book. The characters in that aren't developed the way they are here.
Right.
And just, yeah, it's weird we're out of Stanland, but I am excited to get to a one book an episode for a while, which I think we have probably until it or Skeleton Crew. I forget which one came first. I think we're on like a good. Every book we have for a while I think only needs 1 episode.
I had a terrible realization just now,
What's
which
that?
is that for a week and a half, I've been waiting for the opportunity to use the phrase Deus Ex Trashina. And I missed it. Oh, I've been sitting on that.
Deus Ex Trashina.
But you haven't
Deus
missed
Ex
it because you just said
Trashina.
it.
I
and
did, but
it is enjoyable.
But it is funny because like Deus Ex Machina, it's machine of God, and this is literally a machine, like
Right.
a machine, and then God coming down and
That leads me to think,
doing
like,
it.
what do you, well, how many red clown noses do you think Trash would have given this book?
he's bumpity bump. He just
not as many as he'd give Baby Can You Dig Your Man by Larry Underwood.
Yeah, he loves
Oh,
that.
man.
Well, thanks so much for listening, guys. This has been a wild ride going through the stand with you all, and luckily it's not over. So get on Amazon, rent that stand miniseries.
I don't think you can.
Really?
I don't think you can rent it digitally anywhere because there's some weird rights issue. It was on Netflix.
It was
for a
on
while,
Netflix for a while.
But
Yeah.
I don't think you can rent it. I think you can like find Daily Motion or
Yeah.
YouTube clips.
Okay. Watch it illegally.
Or you can probably buy the DVD. For
You can buy the DVD. That's how we watched it. Watch it, catch up on it because we have so much to talk about with it, and that's probably going to be a gargantuan episode because it also will include an interview with director Mick Garris,
Which-
who is such a nice man.
He was great, and it was. I think that was like 45 minutes too,
Yeah.
right? Just the interview with him. I mean, we'll of course condense some of it, but he had a lot of great things to say, a lot of cool stories, much like Adam Stork about filming and what went into the adaptation process and all that.
Yeah, and then also you're going to want to gear up because 2 weeks from today, you're going to get the Stand miniseries episode, and then 2 weeks from then, so a month from today, we're going to be heading off on a very long walk, as they say. That is our next book. So start reading that now that you've finished The Stand. And in the meantime, long days and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.